Hey everybody, it's Honesty and Surprise.
Surprise!
Me and AG are back for a special Christmas episode slash AG birthday episode of the Right Honesty podcast. Um,
Hilarious. That's what we're calling it. It's the
yes,
special
it's a
the
very
special
special
episode.
episode because the season is not starting, but I had to deal with
True.
this foolishness while I was still mad about it. So I had to come on here and get it straight. Attorney General, how you doing?
I am good, and I'm glad to be back for this episode because, as you know from behind the scenes, listeners, I'd been simmering,
Yes.
bubbling, boiling over alone, waiting for my
Don't be
bae
dramatic because
to.
you said that's how you wanted it. You said you wanted to finish it first and then sit back and laugh in hysterics at me going through it alone.
Well, that was until I was like sometimes fighting for my life in like on the Bourbon Street, with some of our sister readers about some of the foolishness that went on in this series. And I was like, dang it. And people kept saying, well, when are you and HP gonna talk about this? She gotta read it first. So then I started just peer pressuring you. I was like, look,
I'm glad
okay,
I
I
I'm
can't
glad I did
wait.
get into it. I'm glad I got into it. I
What
have
and what did I say? I said this is the perfect series to get your blood pumping and your juices flowing again and your blood pressure nice and high as
way
only
too
love
high.
can do.
Way too high. And okay, let's just get started. Let's just get started. I do have a summary. Sometimes I don't have a summary or whatever, but I have a summary today, and I hope
Oh, wait,
everybody's
so,
all right.
you're going to withhold on the name calling in the summary,
Who
correct?
told
Gonna
you that?
wait till we.
Well, you heard that. I'm both guns blazing out the gate because this man is not a safe person to be around, and I think that woman has been gaslit to the moon, and I want her to have some. First, I want her to have some supervision, and then I want her to have some support. Now, y'all can't hear AG laughing because her Zoom quiets her if she gets too loud. But I'm telling y'all, this man is not a safe person to be around.
And
Now,
right now, Sandra Yvonne and Maisha and May in particular are all passing around the
and
offering
they're
plate
all
and
right.
queuing up the organ because they agree with you.
Because when I was on my bed of affliction, you understand what I'm telling you? Okay? When I was down bad, something told me, don't fool around with this
I
foolishness.
can't. I
Okay?
can't.
And I reserved it until I had my full strength
I can't.
because I didn't want to be laying in my bed, pressure up over the madness. But then I'm up. I'm back to 100%. I'm uterus free. We out here. And if I run into this nigga in the street, I'm going to kick him in the nuts. Now that's it. He's a terrible person. The worst thing to happen to the LB universe. Worse than Nadira, if you can imagine. Anyway, where's my drink? Excuse me. Foolishness. Okay. Here's my summary. Adrian, don't laugh. Because this is serious. Because y'all should know, just like the Muted series, I sent her walls and walls of text.
Indeed.
2-minute voice notes back to back
Indeed.
to back to back, because I was trying to figure out why this person had not been put in the ground. How is it that nobody snuck up behind him and put his lights out? Anyway, okay.
Breathe.
Here is the summary. I'm breathing.
Breathe, Pastor.
I'm getting myself together. Here's the summary. This is the story.
Oh, God.
Okay?
Already.
This is a story about a woman who is trying to find her authenticity and her happiness, who's trying to live in her own light and her own truth. And she is accosted by an abuser.
Oh, God.
Who tricks her. This is what happens. Who tricks her into being his friend.
Oh, God.
And then parcels out morsels of affection to keep her hooked like a heroin dealer. Oh, get what I'm telling you?
Oh, God.
Okay?
Oh, God.
He keeps her hooked parceling out the tiniest morsels of love and affection, withholding everything else until he impregnates her, not the first, but the second time. Okay? And forces her to remain connected to him. This is the story of a narcissist, is what I'm trying to tell
Wait,
you.
okay, hold on,
What? You don't agree?
hold on. Pastor, I thought
Yes.
your summary was going to be a little bit more measured.
Oh,
Maybe I should take over the summary.
you can say what you want to say as long as it's the truth. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So I would say that this is the story of two confused and misunderstood individuals.
We already disagree. Go ahead. Go ahead.
who who intersect who intersected as children and intersected again as adults, um, and had preconceived notions about each other, that led to words and actions and decisions on both parts, that were misinformed and in some instances had some disastrous consequences. They are also a reminder, as one of your many voice notes pointed out, how therapy can't be the cure all. Number one, if you don't have a good therapist, or number two, if you are not taking the medicine that is being prescribed. um, and so for two people who are in therapy, there continue to be some real head scratching moments between the two of them. But Jazz is on this journey. When they meet, they're both on a journey. um Jazz's journey is very much a spiritual one after getting out of prison and now being laser focused
Spiritual
on
where?
deep breath, Pastor. Laser focused on what he wants for his life. Ashira is also on a journey because she knows what she wants and yet is unclear and or does not yet have the courage to go for it. And she comes to the table, like I said, preconceived notions. They both had them about each other. And I think depending on your life experience and your view of the world, one's preconceived notions may have been worse than the others. But a friendship blossoms, and
You can
certainly
call it that.
sexual attraction and chemistry blossoms between these two people who, for all of the reasons that they are telling themselves they should stay away from each other, they cannot stay away from each other, and they continue to be drawn to each other, because neither one was forcing themselves upon the other. They were actively being in one another's presence after a certain point. And one of the bones of contention is, like you said, Jazz not sharing certain things about himself, and Ashira making certain assumptions and creating the story in her head about who she thinks Jazz is. He also was creating a story in his head about who he thought she was, and that was informing some of his decisions. But when sex happens, one of the things that can occur is life is created, and that's what happens with these two people, whether you like it or not. And
Sadly.
this was definitely a couple where I was like, maybe they shouldn't be together. But a
Maybe.
life is created, and now they are, whether they wanted to be or not, whether they were ready to be or not, they are tied together and in each other's lives now from here on out. And that creates its own hills and valleys to navigate, because that all happened very quickly, right? They weren't even at the year mark, they weren't even at the 6 month mark, I
No.
think, when she got pregnant.
Correct.
So if you just get your mind around that, from the time that they met to when she gets pregnant, that all happens in, I think, less than 6 months. And now, yay, we're about to be parents together.
Is it yay? Do you feel yay?
Well, you know what I mean. Oh, there's so much anger here.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Don't worry. Don't worry. I've noticed.
And look, as is the case, you know, love gives you a happily ever after, but whether or not you as the reader are happy with the ever after
Was
of
not.
this couple, uh, is a different story, because there's a lot of things that go on. There's a lot of things that go on, between this couple. And again, depending on your view of the world, there were very strong opinions about who was the villain? Were they both villains? Who were victims? Were they both victims? And a whole host of other things, which again is also signature Love Belvin, right? That like you are always going to have strong feelings about these characters, and sometimes the strong feelings are pure hatred, sometimes the strong feelings are pure love. Often it is a hybrid of the two, and you're sorting out how you feel literally as the last few lines of the final book are being read. So that's these two, the laborer, as Ashira loved calling him, the laborer, and um the stuck-up suburban girl from Millburn, New Jersey.
Okay.
Because I'm hoping that your pressure has come down, because it's only like the first few minutes, and we need we can't have you popping blood pressure medicine in minute 5. Let's at least wait till like minute 55 before you go completely off the deep end. So now I will ask, Pastor, initial impressions, gut reactions on that someone should have put Jazz down.
Certainly they should have. I struggled with a lot of it until I changed the genre in my mind.
Okay.
So what I mean by this is somebody messaged me after reading Finding Us and was like, I don't know what to do with this story. I was like, I doesn't know either. And girl, I'm sorry. She enjoyed it, but she was like, I did not know what I was getting into. Like, I saw the trigger warning, I saw the disclaimer, like all of that, but I still was not ready for the emotional highs and lows. Okay, cool. The reason I bring this up is because I don't know what to do with the story either, first, but second, it is one thing to go into and expect to read a book from the heights and you get Finding Us. That is like, I thought I was going to get sea bass and I got salmon, or I thought I was going to get both excellent, love them both, whatever, but it's not what I was expecting. Okay. Or like the cake, not cake, or is it ice cream, or is it mashed potatoes? You know how they fix up the food and make it look like you don't know what it is. And so if you lick something and you think that it is going to be ice cream and it's mashed potatoes, you're ready to fight. Because your brain is telling you sweet and cold and you getting hot and whatever, right? So as I read it, I struggled because I was like, where is the romance? Like, they don't get together until like the last 5%. And so once I change, and HP's rules for romance are very strict. Like, I want to swoon, I want them to be like 90% unproblematic. I want hard eyes and just moments, and I want William Ramsey, I want Rhett and Parker, I want whatever. Okay. So none none of that is in this story. But once I changed the genre in my head to women's fiction, or just because of the Ellis's, like urban or whatever, then I could really enjoy it. Like, and it was exactly what you would want a story like that to be. Like, all the hills and valleys made sense. Whatever, which to me I think is important as a reader, because I think you have to take what the author gives you, and I think commensurate with the effort the author puts in. I think it's the responsibility of the reader to put in that much work, or a fraction of that much work, to try to see where the author is coming from. I don't feel like we as readers, now that I got my reader hat on, I don't think we should knee-jerk reaction books, because you could be hungry. Like, I tell folks when if people come to me for counsel, are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Because that's going to exacerbate somebody cutting you off in traffic, or somebody taking too long to to call you back. If you're not in a pleasant context, anything gonna tip you over.
Yes.
And so for me, it's a combination of, like, have you put in the work to try to understand the author's point of view? have you put in the work to try to see, you know, and not to say that you should feel chasms. So if the author has left many, many gaps, then, you know, you got to reckon with that. But in my opinion, you ought to just keep it to yourself. But that's because I'm an author and I don't like negative reviews. But like, I think it's incumbent upon the reader to put some work into. So for that reason, I say all that to say that if I was reading it as a romance, I would have, and I did, because after book one, I was like, Adrian, what is this? What is it? What is it? Why did you ask me read? What is it? But as I kept going, and I was like, okay, I know what I'm getting there. I know what, you know, what it is, whatever. So overall, I enjoyed it. I can't say I didn't enjoy it because my blood pressure is 200. You know what I'm saying?
Over
like
200.
Right, 200 over everything. But like, it was an entertaining story. It was challenging because God knows these people are ridiculous. And there were moments like, you know, there were people in the story that I did love, and, you know, blah 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 blah. Now, much like Nadira and Lons and the Muted people, I don't want them to be together. I do want them to be apart, and I hope they break up, and I hope they are able then to find an appropriate person for them. Of course, Nadira and Jazz should never be with anyone. Never.
God.
But Lons and Ashira can certainly find their mate and go off into the sunset, while the other two people are in straitjackets. So yeah, overall, I liked it. It was like I said, it was entertaining, it was challenging, it was definitely a return to a lot of characters who I enjoy, but boy, oh boy, did they run my pressure up. Like, he especially, and we'll get into why, but I was just like, this person is not safe. He is not a safe person to be around. And when are people going to stop telling him that he's the best thing to ever happen since the Christ child, and really expose him as the raging narcissist that he is now? Attorney General, what were your first impressions?
I feel like I heard, you know, Sandra Yvonne, Maisha, and May shouting hallelujah, amen, and now they're throwing money at the pulpit. That's the visual I had in my
listen,
mind.
You know, I don't mind a love offering. I donate it. I don't have a problem with it because I don't like to keep church people money, but I will donate it to a cause.
Here's what's interesting for me is that, and I read this twice, and I will read this series again. I found myself, and I will freely admit that, yes, I always knew. I mean, I told you after book one, I was like, this is a series I know I'm going to want us to discuss, and I'm going to want to discuss it with love as well. And that was before it was completed, right? Before I knew, because from book one, I was like, okay, all right. These Negroes are getting on my nerves. And I knew I was going to need a therapy session. And I will say, and it is a reminder of how wonderful and how much richness and enjoyment being part of these book groups has added to my reader experience. Because for all the years that I read by myself and was perfectly fine and loved who I loved and enjoyed the books that I enjoyed, did that forever, right? I think that's all of us. We did that forever. And then you enter into this new universe where you are online and interacting with people, most of whom you will never actually meet in person.
Right.
Some of whom, you know, it's been a blessing to meet some in person. So now you have an actual experience to put to that person's name and picture and opinions. And it just adds things, right? It adds things that sometimes you considered, sometimes you didn't. So I say that to say, this in particular in Bourbon Street, it provoked very, very strong reactions. And there was a lot of dialogue. There's a ton of dialogue for weeks, for literally weeks, which again, I go back to giving flowers, because there is something to be said when, you know, a story is provoking that kind of engagement for weeks, and people are like on fire, just, you know, either in defense of or in condemnation of. And I love that, right? I loved it, and I enjoyed watching it play out. And you know, and at least two of them like passively participating, commenting, whatever the case may be, but just being like, I can't wait till me and my girl get back together because I won't be able to talk about this. I need to get it all off my chest, and I got some things to say. And so what was interesting was that I did not hate Jazz.
I don't know how.
I don't want him to be put down. But I did hate some of the things that he did. And I think with Ashira, I found her irritating.
I did too.
And her whole approach in the beginning, it was like, yeah, but I think the difference, or I won't overstate it. I felt like for me, the reason why I was able to get past that relatively quickly was because he was not put off by that. She was almost like a gnat, right?
Okay.
Or like an amusing kitten that's like biting at you, but it doesn't hurt, right? So they're like gnawing on your finger, and it's a little irritating, but it's also a little cute, but they're not hurting you, right? And that helped me not take her preconceived notions about him overly personal. I was thinking to myself as I'm like, she's, saying these things and thinking these things, which, side note, I think it's important for us to always remember that all of us would be crucified if people knew our thoughts, right? Because none of us get through this life without thinking unkind thoughts about folks, right? So that is human. But she also said things, right? So it was like, oh girl, if this had just stayed in your head.
But everything she did, I absolved her of everything. She came to the table with, for me, some naivete, and she was a little unsophisticated. Let me say, she was not as savvy as I thought she should be, given her life experience and life circumstance. But by the time he really was being his full self for the camera, I didn't hold any of her subsequent behaviors against her.
I agree with you on that, because I agree that by the time he starts doing certain things, I was like, brother, what are you doing? They were past that.
Are you doing?
Right. They were past that. Right.
Exactly.
And that's why I felt like, again, that behavior of hers was mildly distasteful. And I was like, girl, come on now. And I also thought, because one of the things that you said in when you were reading, you were like, this feels like social awkwardness. And I was like, I agree with you, right? It was like it was almost like she didn't know how to act around him, and she would let stupid stuff come out of her mouth as a result, right? And unfortunately, it was rude stuff. It wasn't like, oh my god, I love your hair, right? Like, it's kind of like, it was it was stuff was like, oh, because you have a curfew, or just stuff that she was saying. I'm like, girl.
Or even when she came to his mother's apartment, and she got on some pretend outfit that she did, each piece is $1,000, $1,500. So it's like, what? But she trying to look like she from around the way. It's like, girl, please sit down.
And so the thing was, though, that they both continued to choose to be in each other's space.
Yeah.
And so while he could have very easily cussed her out one good time, and I wish he had, candidly, I wish he had, right? I wish that in the beginning, instead of that whole ruse with the apartment and the projects, I wish he had just cursed her, blessed her out. I wish he had done a tap of the brown on her. Right, in Jesus' name. I wish he had just like dressed her down like a old Southern woman and been done with it. It would have been warranted, it would have been appropriate, and it would have dispensed with all of that, right? And instead, he went about the elaborate ruse, the bringing in furniture, the setting up the apartment, and I was just like, this is a lot for it was weird, because it's like, to me, I was like, this is overly petty to do to someone that you like, and you want to continue to be around that person. This is overly petty.
Where was it supposed to go? Like, I don't understand. Okay. So sorry, I'm sorry. You can finish your thought because I'm getting ready to go on a rant.
No, no. So it was things like that where I was just like, and here's why I think I didn't go so far as to hating jazz, right? Because one of the things that I continue to remind myself with two things. Number one, jazz had zero adult relationship experience. And candidly, the relationship experience he had in his early 20s did not count, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two, spending a decade in prison does things to you, right? And it certainly does not mature you in terms of interpersonal relationships with the opposite sex, right? In terms of romantic relations, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
look at your circumstances. And he had made the decision to not, it's not like he had pen pals and women visiting him. He didn't do any of that.
Mm-hmm.
um and so and the third thing that I would say is I took Love at her word when she was like, he did not have um ill intent towards Ashira, right? That she, while she absolutely did not agree with some of his decisions, and Love, doesn't get caught up in overly defending her clients, and they do what they do, and when she has an issue with it, she acknowledges that she didn't agree, and so shouldn't have done this and so shouldn't have done that. But she was like, he's not, it wasn't like intentional wanting to harm her, wanting to hurt her, anything of that. But what that left me with was two things. Jazz's attitude was very much the ends justify the means and by any means necessary. And then two, he was, I thought, and before you get your panties in a bunch, because I'm about to reference Ezra, he reminded me a little of Ezra in that he would have these moments of incredible thoughtfulness
I
about
don't
this
disagree with
woman.
that at all. I don't disagree with that
Okay,
at all.
okay. These moments of incredible thoughtfulness about this woman, right? When he set her up with the real estate agent to go
Mm-hmm.
scouting for locations for a club, like, baby, go do it. Like, and that was before
Mm-hmm.
they were in love, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then he would mishandle things, and the undercurrent of those decisions, those very questionable decisions, it was, I will do whatever I have to do to get what I want. And I have decided I want this woman. I want this woman to be my wife. And the ends justify the means, and by any means necessary. Put those together. And it left me with this: what you want from me and what you want with me should never trump what I want for myself. I don't care how much you love me. I don't care how much you feel like you are motivated by the best of intentions. What you want for me, and let's just confine this to like romantic
Mm-hmm.
relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you want for me and what you want with me should never trump what I want for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we all start operating like that, we've seen how that can lead to very toxic situations. And this situation was quite toxic.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like once Jazz got into his mind that he wanted her after not wanting her to be his wife, and then it was like, no, switch flipped, it's going to be her. He basically set about on this, the ends justify the means and by any means necessary, because I want her to be my wife. And I'm not going to hurt her. I'm going to love her and I'm going to take care of her. I'm going to be good for her. And that means what I want for her and what I want for us trumps what she may want for herself and what she may want for us. Because she wanted to be with him, she didn't want to be his wife, right? That's the bone of contention, right? In parts of book 3, where it's like this, well, why can't we just be? And I don't want to be a baby daddy. Well, you shouldn't be having sex, sir. We'll get to that too.
Okay.
So now you can go back to your read.
Okay. So to say that he didn't intend to hurt her, I that's fine if that's like, she wrote the book, she could tell us what the man was thinking. But for me, your intention doesn't mitigate your action.
Absolutely. Agree with that 1,000%.
And so what I couldn't figure out was, how is it and I think this is something that I mentioned when I was yelling at you in the voice note too. Like my issue with him was, you want us to have a relationship, but only on your terms.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't see me in the same way that you're saying that I'm judging you, you're judging me.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're
Absolutely.
projecting onto me your own insecurities.
Yes.
And then at the same time, like exacerbating or throwing, you know, lighter fluid
Mm.
on her insecurities, because he come to see the girl and she starts sneezing, which mean you've been around Pollard. Like, I only sneeze when I'm around people that have cat dander on them. There's only one person in my circle right now, because first Peach came with the cat hair, and so you come to me, and you know, it's like he was constantly giving her reasons to second guess her reality, because his behavior didn't match his actions. And so I don't care about your lists. I don't care that people mistakenly calling you a prism, because he was not a complex person. He was just a liar. I don't care. Like all that what you got going on about the Lord and the storm in your eyes and the lion and the witch in the wardrobe, whatever the fuck. I don't care about none of that. I care about, even if he had never told her name, even if he had told her name from day one, or if he had never told her his name, he was inconsistent. And his behavior didn't match what he said he wanted. He said, I
I
want to be
agree.
your friend,
I agree.
but did none of the emotional work to develop a friendship.
Yeah.
And so he's expecting her to give her body and her time and her trust and her friendship to get these little crumbs in return.
Yeah.
And so they go from coffee and tea to I want a friend to her coming into his space. His mother cooks her dinner. Then he goes to the real house and she found out that he a secret billionaire, which like that trope is fine, but like it's problematic, but whatever. Like, then they're having sex, they're going on trips together, and he's saying marry me, but he does nothing to make that happen. And in fact, he's withholding all the things that would make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I go back to the lack of the relationship experience. And one more thing I would add to that is like for the most part, the lack of emotional intelligence. Like he had it and he displayed it sometimes, and then other times he was very much someone who had spent important formative years in prison.
Yes, but I
To me.
also think, like, and this is common in Love's heroes, that they really see the women that they're interested in are objects to them until they become human. And
Yeah, that's fair.
this is the most thorough example of that. So like Lex was a sexual object before she became basically his intercessor and covering, like honestly. You know what I'm saying? Like she ends up being such an integral part to even his spiritual walk. But you know, I can call a role, but the reality is it's a common theme in her work that the woman is not fully formed in the mind of the man until they go through a whole lot of bullshit.
Yes.
And it's like, you know, I saw somebody put on social media, like, if you show him that you're willing to go through the rain and the storm, or the storm and the rain, you'll never see sunshine. Like to me, it's like, I guess the question that I kept asking myself as I was reading this, especially because they don't get together until the very, 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 very end, is this worth it? Like, is the dick that good? Like, I mean, yes, we're gonna fuck in front of the mirrors and that's cool, you know what I'm saying? But like, he really did a number on her in a way to me that was like, which is why I was like, this got to be something other than romance, because I want to call 911. Like, there is an adult being abused. Like, what is going on? So go ahead.
Well, let me ask you this, because one of the things that kept coming up was, well, at all times, she had the ability until she gets pregnant, and she chose to have their daughter, because he did not force that issue.
He did not.
She had the option to walk away. And so she actively, all that you have laid out, she chose over and over and over again to be an active participant in that circus, because he was not holding her hostage, just as she was not holding him hostage.
Correct.
And yes, right, there what I've always landed on, there has to be accountability on both sides, but where I come out is also, just as we must hold her accountable for staying, that does not absolve him of accountability for the things that he continued to do.
Yeah.
And I think the withholding, into the end of book 2, right, is the perfect example of that. Because yes, she could have hired people, like she could have gotten private investigators, she could have Googled, she could have done all manner of things. Yes, agree.
But that's why
Right.
I question her savvy, and that's why I call her naive, and naive to the point of like, you might have bumped your head at an early date and they didn't catch it, because if she had been the head of HR and her dad had one of the largest Black-owned development firms in the multi-million, like, you know what I'm saying, like a development company, like property development, this is hundreds of millions of dollars of portfolio. And so there were some areas where she showed some naivete and some immaturity that to me didn't match the worldliness and sort of the having your guard up that you would if you were in such a position. Because she would have always been around men who were trying to put their hand up her skirt. She would have always been around men who were calling her names, second guessing her, constantly trying to figure out if she had nepotism baby. And of course she is, but did she earn at least the right to be there? And so she would have had to prove herself so often that to me, this brand of bullshit wouldn't have flown. And so the what I choose to read into it is, well, and it's based on the evidence that we have. Her mother was withholding. And if you have a parent that withholds affection, it creates a very interesting dynamic where you always reach after what you know you're not going to get. Her father knew he was wrong, felt guilty to the point of not being able to connect with his own outside child, and permitted her mother to continue to treat her that way, either by being withholding in her presence or removing herself from her life altogether. And anytime her mother came in town, she shit in her cereal.
Yes.
And so to me, a person that comes from that kind of emotional upbringing, they will take the abuse of a partner as long as the partner keep dropping crumbs.
And I think, you make some good points. I think, though, it was the reminder that simply having the financial box checked over and beyond, right? And that does not cure everything. That does not fix everything.
No.
And I think it was another good example to see. Money can cover up all manner of sins. It doesn't fix it necessarily.
And this is why I'm gonna go into Bourbon Street and I'm gonna knock over some people's drinks, because the next time we get down to the indie love, I'm stepping on people's pinky toe. Because to me, it like, because and I did have a chance to go back, because I asked Maisha to tag me in the chat. So I did have a chance to go back and read some of some folks' comments. And just because this man has money and pretends to whisper the name of Jesus doesn't mean that we need to be forgiving all of the manipulation that he wrought on this girl. And I'm like, I completely hear you where you say, like, spent 10 years in prison is not one night. 10 years in prison is a long motherfucking time.
Yeah.
And so I don't negate. And then, his mother had had her stuff. His father had his stuff. So like, I don't take away it, just like, what's my boy name? Isaac, similar situations. In terms of like the father having a certain lifestyle and then the mother not, like, Isaac's mom ends up, I think, ODing, like, so it's, I get it. I don't take away from the fact that he also had baggage that made him a danger to other people. But I did not, and she had baggage, which would make her susceptible to that kind of danger. So they were the perfect, very unfortunate storm. But for me, I was reading this like, please find somewhere else to go. Like, oh my God. And I wanted Peach to be like, baby. And so the reason why I'm gonna step on people's pinky toe is because I feel like sometimes as readers, like if a man is written as super attractive, super masculine, know how to swing his dick, whisper Jesus on the weekend, and got a whole lot of money, all of a sudden he could do no wrong.
Whisper Jesus on the weekend.
Because that man wasn't saved. I don't want to hear that shit.
Well, I will say this about that, because I agree with you. I don't know if I'd go as far as you would, but I agree with you that I became less and less impressed with Jazz's spirituality and Christianity, because and it reminds me of people that I think we've all encountered in our own lives, right? Maybe the examples have been less dramatic, but it's like, I don't care how many times you're throwing up the name of the J-Man, right? Like, when you are living like Beelzebub, then you're Beelzebub, right?
If it walks like a duck and quack like a duck,
right? Because once he embarked on this relationship with Ashira, he was no longer following the roadmap that theoretically had been given to him by God, right? In his prayer. And so it was like, and then he began making certain decisions, calling audibles.
Yes.
Right. That it was like, okay. Now I know you ain't consult.
Right. You ain't said a damn prayer about this. You ain't fasted or nothing.
Because I know Sky Daddy. I love that. Sky Daddy did not tell you.
Did not.
To keep this woman as your personal assistant so that you could both make your daughter's mother jealous and control her, as you admit to yourself. Right? Sky Daddy also did not tell you to bring in another woman as a dating prospect and have premarital sex with her, Mr. I hate being a baby daddy. Sky Daddy did not tell you to do those things in the name of making this woman your wife. That was Jasvi Lamont Sinclair making those decisions because you decided you wanted this woman to be your wife, right? And that is a reminder of, and you and I have talked about this before, when people start using God to say, God told me this and God told me that. And it's like, well, was that really God?
Or why is he telling you to do something that's hurting me?
Right. Was that really God, or was that just you deciding what you wanted, and now you are using religion to explain away a decision that you human made all on your own? Because you wanted what you wanted. So I agree with you that after a while I was kind of like, Jazz, you can just leave God out of this, because
you don't have to rededicate. You know how to become a prime. You know how to become a prime. And they want to rededicate and they get on the altar. That's what you need to do, because you've slipped up. And it's cool. Listen, we fall down and we get up. That's what Donnie said. A saint is just a sinner who fell down. I don't have no problem with it. You need to rededicate.
Yes.
You need to do your first fruits.
Because that
you need to do your tithe.
Yes. It felt like we were throwing like a fur coat over dirt and pretending that the dirt wasn't there. I was like, no. There's a mound of dirt underneath this. Right. And I didn't love that, because it wasn't that, and I didn't think that Jazz was playing games, but I did think that was another way that in my mind. So by the time we got to book 3, I felt like Ashira was doing a lot of, as she was self-reflecting, she was also taking more and more accountability, right? And thinking about her decisions and her thought process and how she ended up in a certain place and so on and so forth. And I didn't always love where she ended up. I hated the way she moved in the Josie situation, because I'd have been like, I am removing myself from this while you figure out what you're doing with her. After you were all up in my guts on vacation, you're not going to have both of us. And I got the sheet from her perspective. She's like, I'm not competing with Josie. I'm not competing with Josie. I'm competing with our past. Fine. You're not tasting this anymore until you figure out what you're doing. And I hated that, right? But okay, fine. But I did feel like we were getting more accountability from her, right? In her mind, in her thought, she was reflecting on how she had handled things and was like, I could have done things differently. I see where I did certain things, fine. Whereas with Jazz, what I felt like I kept getting from him was, even when he quote unquote took accountability and was like, when he apologized for the project stunt, was like, well, you made me want to be petty. I'm sorry, but you made me want to be petty. And it was just like,
not sorry.
Right. It was like, brother. And then in the end, when he admits to us and himself that the Ava and the Josie situations were absolutely part of the plan to manipulate Ashira to grow the fuck up, as he said, and become his wife. He wanted her as his wife, and if he had to use other women to get her there, then so be it. Again, the ends justify the means.
Yes, but it's so I think what in terms of the whole like religious component, but even when it came to their personalities and their character, to me it read over and over again as because the things that they said did not match the things that they did. But to me, it read as I I'm saying what I wish was true, not what's actually true. But to what you were just talking about, like the ends justify the means, I also kept asking myself all throughout the book, like, why aren't y'all together? Like, there was literally no reason for them to not be together other than the one he had made up in his mind.
Well, see, I disagree with that. I
Well, you're
disagree with
wrong,
that.
but let's talk
Well,
about why.
well, so, it didn't, at the end of book 2, certainly on her part, there is so much hurt and anger and resentment towards him, right? Because she has had bomb after bomb dropped on her. And one of the other things that I don't know if you saw this in the comments that you saw was people, they did this more so right after book 2. So that would have been months ago. Those who were kind of like, why is she so bothered about, well, okay, he's told you your name and she flies off the handle. And I always view that as that was just the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
Right. Like it wasn't, it's like at that point, he could have been like, I actually wear a size 9 instead of a size 10. She's like, nigga!
Exactly.
Like, I think she would have just lost it, right? The woman was, 50, 11 months pregnant, right? Because she goes into labor that night. But by this point, she is dealing with the fact she's still nursing the feelings of what happened about her father's business, right? Even though she didn't want it. And there were people like, well, she didn't even want it. I'm like, but that's not really the point, right? And I was glad that was addressed in book 3. Because the point was, on the one hand, it was like, I understand that you had these plans before we met, but by the time I learn of this, you and I are like, we're in a relationship, right? And then to find out that not only had you made these moves so that now you own my father's business, but you and my father have a nasty past with each other. So now it colors everything. And yeah, once she had distance, but when she's still pregnant, all of this is fresh and new, right? And she's processing that. And the day she finds all of that out, the same day she finds out she's pregnant, right? Because she literally kind of like almost throws the pregnancy stick at him and says, this is how you conduct yourself in a relationship. You don't hide, you don't drag stuff out, you don't hide it. You just come right out and say, this is what's going on, right? And then the 2 days later or whatever, that's when they go and they tell her father and all this comes out. And it was just kind of like, that's when she finds out about the past, right? So it's like, when she tells him she's pregnant, he has just dropped the bomb on the Danny Lou, and the fact that he's now going to own her father's business. And then when they go to the house to tell her father that she's pregnant, that's when she then finds out about this history between her father and now her child's father. And it's just like, mother, how many times do I have to tell you?
Right.
That finding this shit out in piecemeal, the crumbs, and it's always in the worst case, like it's always in these bad situations that I'm finding stuff out where you're constantly blindsiding me.
Yep.
And every time he was just kind of like, I mean, the Danny Lou situation, he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to happen this way. But it's like, by that point, that was the umpteenth time that had happened. And then, oh, by the way, then what happens a few days later is finding out the nasty history between her father and him, right? So by the time she's getting ready to have Siobhan and he finally shares his name, I just felt like she was just like, like that was it, because I think your point was well taken when you were ranting at me while you were reading. You're like, by this point, he's already told her that he was a murderer, right? Now, obviously, his rationale was, once you Google me, then all the gory details that had been, reported. Now you get to you see all of that, right? And now you really, because he did give her the sanitized, "I killed people," right? And it's like, I killed, okay, all right. But now she would have been privy to all of the gory details as was reported in the media. And it was like, but you wanted her to marry you. So
That's
how?
my point.
And that just didn't, but that's where I felt like he was showing the emotional intelligence of like a kid that just wasn't making the connection. It's like, brother, you can't be looking at this woman to try to make this lifetime commitment, and yet you think that actively withholding things until you have her in your grasp is the healthy and appropriate strategy to pursue.
But he always had her in his grasp.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not like she was L, because God knows Jackson had to chase her random son. Like, it's not like she was like giving him the cold shoulder. And even Winter, when Raji sent her away and he said, "They go ironclad winter,"
Yeah,
and he shows up and she slapped him in the face. Like, it's not like she was giving him the business at every turn. She was showing him over and over and over and over again that she wanted to be with him, that she was willing to be accommodating. She did not know the man's name. Now, not to take away from the fact that, yes, it was very weird of her, but I mean, I understood it based on her baggage to even deal with a person who won't tell you their name.
yeah.
But that to me is why, I said, like, in the beginning, I was like, I get why she would continue to go after them because of what her parents' experience was. I even understand why he would try to go about it this way. But at the same time, it just, after he had been burned once, I didn't understand why he would keep going with that strategy
Agreed.
of only telling an eighth of an inch of a percent when you can be done with this.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and like, what it made me think of? Alexandra House is book. What's the one with Lorenzo?
Yes, and
And
Renee.
yes, Lorenzo and Renee, Zoe and Renee. And there are two secrets, but one he tells her readily and the other one comes out later.
Yes.
But the one he tells her readily, they do this question game, and she asks him, "Have you ever killed anybody?" He was like, "Do you have any guns? And were you da 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 da?" And she said, "Have you ever killed anybody?" And he tells her the truth.
Yeah.
And he says, "What does that make you feel about me?" Because he also was afraid of her leaving him. He
Yes.
also he didn't go to jail, but he had a lot of years of crime behind him, doing stuff he shouldn't have done. And he tells her and he asks her, "Is that going to make you leave me?" And she says, "You are the kindest person that I've ever been with. My ex-husband don't even have a parking ticket. And you have treated me better," because her ex-husband ends up doing all this crazy stuff.
Yes.
So, like, to me, love covers a multitude of sins. Not lies covers a multitude of sins.
Yes. Yes.
And so if you respected her humanity and her personhood and her womanhood, you would not have gone about it that way. And so it showed like a lack of respect for himself. So just like with Ezra withholding what he really wanted from Lex showed a lack of faith, because if you believe that God sent her, then you believe God gonna make her heart ready. In that same way, Jazz to me just showed a lack of respect for Ashira. Like, and you don't get to have it both ways. And so ultimately, through his own immaturity, they were in this perpetual talking phase where he kept wanting greater and greater depth of emotion from her, and she kept giving it to him. And then he kept acting like all he needed to do was like throw her a little piece of an orgasm and he was fine. I'll stab you.
Well, well, ma'am, please put the knife away. Again, I think that goes back to the fact that he was incredibly emotionally immature.
Which
It
is why she
was.
should have got away from him, but she was
Well,
immature too, and it was the perfect terrible storm, and that's why they needed supervision.
I never thought about it. This is, why I always need to discuss these stories with you, because I wasn't articulating it in my mind, the whole Noelle Celestine dynamic, and then seeing how that paralleled and influenced her. Like, I got it. I knew that it was like, okay, yeah, there's a connection there, but I had not put it that way in my mind. And hearing you, you know phrase it that way, actually it makes a lot more sense, right? That like if you grew up with a parent that withheld affection and praise, how you then are constantly chasing
Yeah,
that,
it seems normal.
and right, and you then are going after people that withhold that from you, and you don't even necessarily tie it to
Mm-mm.
what was withheld from you in childhood and whatnot. And again, I felt like in Jazz's mind, at the end of the day, once he decided, like you said, love, covers a multitude of sins. It was like once he decided he loved this woman, he wanted to be with her, then it was kind of like, look, so what I want for us should you should just give into that, right? Give
Yes,
into
but
what I
she
want
was
for
never
us.
not, and that's why I said he was not living in the present reality
Yeah.
because, and I don't say this to say, so y'all know, like, I don't allow no Lex slander whatsoever, but I I understand people who were frustrated with her. I also
Yeah.
think that we as readers are harder, and this is not anything new for anybody to hear, are harder on the women in books than we are on the men in books. And so I think what got my pressure up even more after I finished reading was hearing about and seeing how so many people were on his side. And for me, it was like, this is textbook narcissistic abuse. Like,
Mm,
this guy is a problem for her. And yet they're both broken, but
yeah.
that doesn't absolve either one of them, which is why, when we get to stab, the therapist is one of the people that's going to catch it, because because these people were not equipped for what they wanted,
Yeah.
and he was not in present day. He was still however old he was. Honestly, he was however old he was when he realized his mother was using. Because the same way that you suffer, and not suffer, but the same way that you are emotionally stunted if you do drugs as a teenager, that's like when you stop developing emotionally, and it's not until you're in recovery that you pick it up again. The same thing happens if you're the child of a person that's has an addiction problem. And so, and
Mm.
I can't remember if his mom had an addiction problem or if she was just out there, like if she was just,
No, she had an
you
addiction
did okay.
problem. Yeah. Yeah.
So, once you're 7, 8, and 9, and you're realizing that everybody else has lights but you, everybody else has food but you, and you eating, ketchup soup and shit, like that does something to you. It grows you up, but it also robs you of the ability to like develop emotionally at an appropriate rate.
Yeah.
And so, like, he just wasn't, he never could see what was right in front of him. He was constantly rehearsing his list. He was thinking about his past every
Yeah.
time he talked to anybody in his family, because they were so proud of him. They were constantly telling him, yeah man, you really did it. Yeah, but all they really meant is you got money now.
Yeah.
And he had the money before he went in. He just came out and figured out how to launder it.
Yeah.
But like, it was really a situation where they saw him as the one to make it out, but he really didn't make it out. He really was in the same situation psychologically and emotionally, as maybe even a little bit worse than a lot of the people who were looking up to him. But he
Yeah.
couldn't see that, because every time anybody talked to him, they was telling him that he was a lion and he was king of the streets and don't nobody need to see him, and he throwing the block a birthday party. But what does that have to do with the man on the inside? Which is why I was
And
irritated with Ezra, because I was like, when are you gonna have a dream and get this boy together? Ezra got too many kids.
They went from none to 1 to 3.
His focus is off. You
Back
need to
to
get
back
back
to
to the
back.
dream. Where
Back to
is
back
your
to back.
multicolored coat?
But
We need the dream coat. Figure out what's going on with this boy, because you're not discerning what's wrong with him.
but so your point about the family, it's a great point, right? Because what gets shared in the bits and pieces, right, is his family had some shit with them,
Hell
right?
yeah.
And so you hit I think the nail on the head, that as far as and this is real, right? That's real.
Yes, yes.
That particularly when the family's legacy has been poverty, and
Mm-hmm.
one has made it out the street life. Yes, he went to jail, but now he is thriving
Mm-hmm.
financially, is just got it. You're right that no one pays attention to
Mm-mm.
the mental and emotional, because as far as they're concerned, you are mentally and emotionally as together as you need to be, because look at what you have accomplished in terms of material things.
Just like might makes right, money makes right. He got to be doing
Yeah,
good. He got money.
exactly. And that's, you couple that with our community's historical stance, on mental health anyway, and therapy and
Hmm.
things of that nature. And I mean, look, it was a surprising development that therapy was where they intersected again. But as we said, like, if you're not taking the medicine, and or if you and the therapist are not connecting the way that you need to, then you can be going, but it's not
Yeah.
necessarily advancing the ball in terms of getting you to a different place. And so you've got these two, which Love has always been unapologetic about. She tells stories about broken people, and just as money does not fix brokenness in childhood, Ashira,
Right.
money does not fix brokenhood in
Correct.
adulthood, right? The work is what
Correct.
fixes the brokenness. And so we saw that play out. We saw
Absolutely.
that play out. Um,
Which is why, for me, like, they don't need to be together. You don't date the person you meet in the group home. Okay. Y'all both got problems. You don't date the person that you meet at the day program. If we both in here together, that means we both got problems. Let's stay separate. Don't be together.
well, I mean, in the irony, right? Like he said to his father, he's like, just as you met and slept with Charmaine, at the job center, you knew she was a drug addict. And these two end up
Yeah. Oh, it was
connecting, and
definitely, I mean, like, it is a textbook of example of, number one, that the apples don't fall far from trees.
hmm
And that, like, you you're only well if you're well. There
yeah,
is no substitution or alternate route to doing the work of healing. But both of them really were spending a lot of time trying, and it wasn't a conscious thing, but I mean, they were aware of their shortcomings, but they were not aware of just how much turbulence was going on in the inside of them, which to me
yeah,
is why they kept going back to each other. I think
mm,
if they had sat across from someone and someone had just outlined what we have just outlined, they would not look at each other the same.
hmm,
I don't think that they were fully cognizant of all of the drama. I think they just knew, I got some shit with me, she got some shit with her, but
yeah,
like, I really like her, she's cool, she opens up another side of things, she's saying the same thing about him, and they didn't see that, like, no baby, y'all are in danger.
yeah,
Like, you really need to, it's like people meeting in Alcoholics Anonymous, like people meeting in AA and NA. Like,
yeah,
unless we have many, many, many years of sobriety behind us, we do not need to be together.
mm,
But they didn't see it that way, because sometimes people feel like, oh, I'm in therapy, so I'm doing good. Nah, you not listening though.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and how much have you really been able to identify and recontextualize? So that's why I say there are a couple that I don't want to be together, and I hope in future books they are apart. Because
not going to happen.
or that something has been done to help them see what needs to be seen. But I mean, at the same time, like, that doesn't happen with Asmi and Raina. He's a sociopath, so they just keep having children, and he in love with her, and she in love with him, and it's fine. So I mean, I get it, but at the same time, I will say this: he did not become. I didn't forgive him like I forgave Ezra. I didn't forgive him like I forgave. I can't. I don't think nobody else really made me mad, mad, mad. Ezra was the only one where I was like, "You're out of your mind." Um, but to me, he still is in the sunken place to me, and she is too, just for different reasons.
Yeah, I think what was missing for me, and like I said, I never got to the point where I hated Jazz, but I never felt like I never felt contrition, right? Like I never
To your
felt,
point, yeah.
yeah, I never felt contrition. He felt like, look, I did what I had to do to make this woman my wife.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted her. I wanted her to be my wife. I want us to be a family. And I did what I felt I had to do to accomplish that goal. And I have done it,
Mm-hmm.
period. And I was just kind of like, I
Yeah.
that didn't sit well with me
I don't get the sense that he would
because
have done anything different.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And even when he had certain light bulb moments. So let's take the Celestine situation.
Hmm.
Celestine needed to be stabbed, and so
For
did
sure. For
Noel.
sure.
They both need to be stabbed and then put in a nursing home where they get tapioca pudding and not enough water. Um, because I didn't understand. It's like he peeped from the very beginning, right? When she takes him to Delaware with her, and he meets Celestine, and he's looking at this dynamic, and he's like, "Huh, okay, this is not right.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
whatever I come from, I recognize this ain't right."
Right.
And yet when Siobhan comes along, we know that Jazz has been giving Celestine access to Siobhan, where he'll take her down there to visit and so on and so forth. And I just kind of felt like, again, he knew that that dynamic between Celestine and Ashira continued to be very toxic, that Celestine attacked Ashira regularly. That was her thing.
Hmm.
And yet he was actively facilitating the relationship with Siobhan. And it is not until Noel and Celestine pull the not telling the nanny where
Right.
Siobhan
Which was
is.
so odd.
It was like it took an over the top incident for him to
Hmm.
finally check her mother, when what he should have been saying all along was, number one, you should not be going through me to get to your granddaughter. You should be going through your daughter. And the reason
Right.
why you're not going through your daughter is because you have a horrible relationship with her that you have created.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to give you a pass on that by making it easy for you to just completely avoid having to go through your daughter.
Yep.
Um, and I was just like, why? Like, bruh, because I would say this. There were people that had strong opinions about, you know, how Jazz navigated the co-parenting relationship with Ashira. And I thought he was a great co-parent. Like, I gave grace for
Yeah.
the
I think
incident
so.
where he doesn't make Shishi
Go with, yeah.
go with Ashira. And I was just kind of like, their first time parents, it's still, she's turning 3. 3 is still fairly irrational.
Yeah.
And so I gave grace for that. And I thought he was an
I did
excellent
too.
co-parent.
Yeah.
And I thought he showed flashes of the ability to be a great partner. But I was also kind of like, I am not going to sprain my wrist, because there are lots of men that are great parents that are horrible partners.
Yeah.
They absolutely those two things coexist all the time,
Hmm.
right? With a man that's a fantastic partner, I mean a fantastic father to the children he shares with a woman to whom he was a horrible partner.
Yep.
So one does not automatically grant you the other. But there were just these moments where I was just kind of like, brother, like, you done seen, why are you, it shouldn't have gone on this long, but where you finally threatened Celestine and was like, get your shit together. Otherwise, my daughter is not going to be around you. I was like, that
Right.
should have happened sooner. And it was just
Definitely.
incidents like that where I was just like, that was just, I was like, why did that take so long? Where he would like observe it and he saw it and he knew what he was seeing. And it was just like, huh.
That's what I mean by, like, he was never in real time. He was always 2 years behind, like, cognitively, where he should have been. Because if that had been happening to him, immediately he would have nipped it in the bud.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. And I think another to that point where he has this moment and he says to himself, and I can't remember the context where he has this light bulb moment. And it might have been surrounding Celestine, actually, um, where he's like, for the first time, realizing that it never occurred to him that things could hurt Ashira. It's
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, so you thought she was a robot? Like, it's
Yeah.
like it's like he took, because she always knew how to put on a smile and she knew how to be the life of the party, right? And she was
Hmm.
extroverted, more extroverted than him. That also is real, right? Of
Right.
people then making certain assumptions that you must not cut you and you don't bleed, right?
Right.
You feel nothing. And then he finally has this moment, and I could not help but wonder what that meant for the time between book 2 and book 3, right? Because it's a 3-year time jump.
Right.
And particularly when you start thinking about the fact that they were still sleeping together, and then she gets pregnant again, and she is only 9 months old, and there were very strong opinions about that and how she handled that and so on and so forth. But like realizing that he was not, for all of his I love you, I love her, I want to be with her, I want her to be my wife, he what having these moments where he just was missing the entire point. And I think what you just said of him not being in the real time, right, of what is actually happening in the moment as opposed to some other point in time that he's fixated on.
Yeah, he was always at least 2 years behind. Like, because
Yeah.
to say, like, I didn't know she could be hurt, but you see how gentle she is with you. You see how soft she is to you, how attentive she is to you, how easy it is for you to get on her nerve. Like, she's, she's bending over. And that's why I'm like, that's why I'm saying that, like, she was bending over backwards to be in this man's space. Like, she was giving like she was showing signs, and for him to, because and it really became interesting. Like, it was a flashing red sign to me when they did the group trip. First of all, they gonna go on a group trip that he has chartered the plane for and rented a house, and they tell her nothing. And then when she say, because she was constantly trying to hold him accountable, but he wouldn't let her.
Yes.
And she says, why you didn't say nothing? Oh, it all happened so fast.
Yes.
Nowhere between your house and the motherfucking airport did you want to say, oh, I'm flying private?
Yes.
You don't think that's weird?
And he deflected because it was like, well, y'all brought this up in front of a bunch of people, that didn't have the money to do it. And I didn't love that, because I was like, okay, brother, you not taking account, like, you a grown ass man. If you didn't want these people to go with you, you could have very easily shut it down. You had not done it before. It's not like you had a track record where they would have expected you to take them.
No, they don't even know your real birthday.
And oh, by the way, that was something that his own relatives set in motion, right? That was Chelsea pressing the issue, and Ashira jumped in. It was like, oh, well, maybe we could do it. It still did not explain. And that was one of those simple things, because by this point, she knows the man has money. So the notion that he would have the resources, there was no reason to lie, to charter a private jet and to rent a house, that should have been a nothing burger, right? That should have been a non-issue, where he could have been like, babe, I'm bringing all these people because I felt compelled. I felt like it was the right thing to do, to bring all these mother fathers, since they were all in the daggone room when this came up.
He could have gave her shit in the light of day. And so now I'm chartering the plane, and now you paying for half, and now I want you to suck my dick every night because I don't even supposed to be going on this trip. Like, he could have gave her the bullshit in the light of day. No, he decided to lie and said at the very end, which is weird.
Yeah, it was a very I agree with you the whole way that was handled. And meanwhile, it seemed like people in all of that fixated on, well, why would she try and pay for the trip for all of them to go snorkeling, scuba diving, whatever it was. And I was just kind of like,
because for me,
that's what we fixating on, while a man done withheld the fact that he chartered a whole private jet,
didn't let her get on it,
and rented a whole private beach house. And it wasn't until didn't tell enough until they literally on the runway in front of the plane. And then it's like, oh, you upset about this?
Like, she crazy. Yeah, but it is on that very trip that he fully falls in love with her in his upside down mind, and then says, now I have to figure out how to convince her to be with me.
Yes.
This girl has given you a kidney, sir. Like, there was nothing she wasn't willing to do, and she had already demonstrated that, but he was 2 years behind today's date. And so he couldn't see it. And so
he was definitely projecting. I agree with that. He was definitely projecting what he felt. And in some ways, then arguably, while Jazz had let go their initial interactions, he was still very much holding on to it. And again, when we realize the timeline, this is all happening, in the first 6 months of knowing and interacting. It kind of makes a little bit more sense, but it's like the disconnect between buying a ring and wanting to
Right.
propose, deciding she's going to be the one that you want to be with, but you continue to blindside, because it literally, when she's asking him as he's making the arrangements with the passports, right? At that point, like, there were so many opportunities, even once they were there, where he could have been like, babe, I don't want you, like, once he saw the reaction to the house, he could have been like,
Yes.
babe, let me, since you didn't love finding out about the house,
Right. Right.
let me go on ahead and tell you how we got here. Okay.
Right. Right.
There was so many, and it was like, why are you continuing to blindside her? And she articulated, she
Constant.
said that to him, like, you keep blindsiding me with these things that, no, if you would just disclose them,
It
they're
would be
not a
over.
big deal, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
principle of it, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the principle of it.
Yep.
So yeah.
All right. Let's carry on. What did you love?
I loved everything about Della.
Yeah, I like Della too. I liked Ava and Josie.
Well, I did not.
Really? Why?
Here's okay. I'll answer the question, and then I'll answer that question. I also loved um this notion of Jazz seeing this image of a successful, loving Black family
Yeah,
and making that his goal.
I can. Yep.
Right. I loved that. And that resonated. And I thought it was sad how things got warped, right, in the
Yep.
interaction with Noel down the road. But that he comes to this house and he sees, this Black man who, yes, he has an attitude with him and is like, fuck him. But, like, look what he has acquired for himself, right? That becomes his goal. But I didn't, going back to Ava and Josie, I and this was another two of the many bones of contention. So let's deal with the Ava situation, right? Ava, I didn't love Ava allowing herself to be a pawn, right? Because at a certain point, Ava knew she was a pawn. When she goes off on Ashira, which I hated that whole thing happened. But when she goes off on Ashira, when they have that interaction at the club, and she's like, I would not, I would never put myself in a position to be going after a man who's so far up another woman's ass, and so on and so forth. And, like, I got her, but I was also just kind of like, and agreed that Ashira started it and Ava finished it. Well, no, I take that back. I'm sorry. Ava started it. Ashira escalated it, and Ava finished it.
Yeah.
Right. And I hated that because we knew how Ashira felt about Ava because we were in Ashira's head. But to that point, we had not seen Ashira behave or attack Ava outwardly, right? She just avoided her. And it was clear she didn't like her, but she avoided her, right?
Yeah.
She avoided interacting with her. And again, if we're going to start crucifying people, right, we got to crucify everybody for their thoughts. But Ava initiated that interaction in the club because Ava and her friends thought they knew something they didn't know.
Yeah.
Right? So they thought Ashira was skipping the line, not knowing that Ashira had been granted special access and had been told to go straight to the front of the line and go in the room. Right? And so when Ava's friends start yip yapping, and Ashira's like, mind your fucking business. And then Ava jumps in. Ava initiated, because prior to that point, we had not seen an Ava Ashira confrontation.
Correct.
So I hated the way that played out, because in the end, you couldn't defend Ashira because Ashira took out on Ava her beef with Jazz. But I was like, Ava should have kept her fucking mouth shut, because you didn't know what you were talking about. Your friends didn't know what you were talking about. Ashira complained to Man. She didn't say anything to Ava.
Right.
Until Ava said something to her. And then Ashira went completely off script. And I was like, no, come back. Why are you doing this? Because now you gave Ava the moral high ground. And then for Jazz to both admit to Ashira, I kept Ava around to make you jealous, and then admit to himself and the reader that he used Ava to exert the one measure of control he continued to have over Ashira. So I did not like Ava for those reasons. And I felt like Ava should have gotten her experience and pieced out a long time ago, because she wasn't hired to be, she allowed him to morph her into a personal assistant, right?
Yeah, because she didn't come for that.
She didn't come for that.
Mhm.
And I hated that, because I was just like, sis, why are you doing this? And you've allowed yourself, like, you scheduling family vacations and so on and so forth, and then to find out, like, he knew exactly what he was doing, and he was very deliberate about it.
Yeah.
And Ava was a pawn. And the same thing with Josie. Josie was a pawn too. And I hated that Lex was the one that hooked them up.
That was very interesting to me. That was very interesting to me. And we can come back to that in a second. I liked Ava and Josie because of the many characters that we met. They were two of the very few that were in the present reality of the world. Like, he was living in the past. He was 2 years behind. His family was living in the past. Ashira was somewhere between reality and La La Land. Like, her mother was living in the past, father living in the past, Noelle living in, like, everybody had baggage from yesterday that was keeping them from observing the sun today. And Ava and Josie understood what time it was. Like, Ava, and what that moment reminded me of is Lex and Precious. But in like the reverse way.
Yeah.
Where Ava is Lex and
Yep.
Ashira is Precious.
Yeah.
And Ava is like, girl, you are sad. Yeah. Like, you want me to be jealous of you or whatever it is you think is going on, but I actually pity you. Like, your situation is unfortunate. I hope you understand that.
Yeah.
And yes, she started it, and her friends should have shut up and whatever, but I just appreciated her for being one of the characters that was in this present day, because so many other characters were really bound by yesterday and many days before, that they weren't up on what was actually happening. And the same is true of Josie. Like, I completely, and I understood, we can come to this too. I understood Ashira being jealous of Josie, and I understood her being livid that he offered her what he never offered Ashira, and yet you telling me I'm the one. Boy, fuck you. But anyway. So, when it finally gets, I felt terrible for Josie that she heard them. I felt terrible for Ashira that she walks in on the date and they having this cutesy piano moment, and she sees that that's what it is, and then I think she sucked the man's dick or some foolishness. One of these times she found out something she shouldn't find out, or did she suck his dick? But whatever. But Josie also, once she really, at the end of their little brief affair, or the end of their interaction, she's like, this is not what I want. You're not what, like, no, I'm out. And I'm keeping the car.
Well, wait a minute. No. He broke up with Josie.
But doesn't she also, let me find it, because I feel like she also is like, she's not heartbroken over it though. Like, she's like, yeah, we probably should do
well,
this.
Actually, wait, wait a minute, because Josie goes to Lex and Esper threatening to release the audio of.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
She did not go quietly into that good night.
But what was her last interaction with him though? Because, okay, now I searched for her name, so I'm seeing that she did screen record the call, and that
the last interaction was when she popped up at his house and was basically like, I'm ready for us to move to the next level. So Josie was trying to play her position into Mrs. Sinclair by basically being like, I'm going to be cool. I've let you know I was not happy.
You're right, because I'm reading it now. So what I liked about her is that she, now mind you, bad time, bad place, but she was at least saying, like, this is what we need to be doing. Like, this, I'm not interested in whatever your little two people at a time, whatever. Like, she staked her claim. Now, it didn't work out.
Yeah, sure didn't.
But at least she spoke up for herself pretty early, I guess, in the game. So I didn't have problem. I was very heartbroken for her though when she heard them having sex. I honestly would have called the Coast Guard. I would have said, there is a vessel. Okay, and I don't know the name of it, but it's registered. let me tell you who the vessel is registered to.
It was the fact that after she heard that, because it's like, okay, before that happens, you're buying the no, we are not together, we have not been together. And that was true. He did not lie about that. At that point they had not been intimate for almost a year, whatever it was. And so he didn't lie about that. But then they went from 0 to 100 real quick, right?
They did.
And she hears that and is like, makes it, well, I'm gonna love him through it, even though it wasn't love yet. I'm gonna love him through it. It didn't hurt that while he was on vacation, he went and delivered her, albeit used, but a Mercedes Benz nonetheless. So she was like, oh, I'm gonna, and then did try to put a foot down when she was like, well, you and I are not going to be intimate. And we hear this relayed by Jazz. He tells Ashira that, she said they would not be having sex anymore, and that would be that. But what did he care? Because at that point, now he and Ashira were being intimate regularly. Right. And even when they go to Della, right, now Ashira's down there with him in Della, but Josie's still waiting in the wings, waiting to just, there and being supportive and so on and so forth. And I was just kind of like, girl, I mean, like, but Josie was determined to do whatever needed to be done in the name of playing the long game, right? And figure, well, if I'm patient,
go ahead.
I that's how I felt, because I was kind of like, okay, he tells you, you've heard them sleep together. Yeah. Now you know that they are at her family's property together. Why does she need to be there? Right. It was this is all about Juggy. Why does she need to be there? And yes, he's telling you they are staying apart, but we know they are sleeping together. So technically he was telling the truth, but he was lying because he was deliberately omitting the fact that they were still having sex together. And Josie wasn't dumb. Josie had lived, okay? Yeah. So Josie wasn't that dumb. I think Josie just decided, we will find our way through this, and I'm not going to throw in the towel, because he is the one that breaks up with Josie, right? After Josie shows up to the house and is like, it's time for us to move forward. After all of that has transpired, Josie is still like, it's time for us to move forward. You have said you are looking for a wife, and I am ready for a husband, and it's time for us to move forward. And then after Juggy cusses him out, after Shira slap fire, I wish she had just left it at slapping the piss out of him and didn't give him a blowjob. I was like, no, don't suck him. Just slap him and like walk out. But I love one of the things. Exactly. Go back to one of the things I love. I loved Juggy cussing him all the way out. It was like, nigga, get yourself together. Like, you don't even know how to do this, and you look stupid. This is dumb, and she doesn't deserve this. Because I was like, is someone going to convict him about that? Like, because he's still, again, as we know, he had made the decision that he was going to have to do what he had to do to get her to fully and completely come on board. And if that meant keeping Josie in the picture, then so be it. If that meant interrupting dates with Josie to swing by and drop off some dick, and I was just like, what?
But from in Josie's shoes, I also understand why she was like, to me, her coming to put her foot down was a combination of, what are we really doing here, but also like, what are we really doing here, but also a little bit of playing the long game. But to me, it didn't come off as malicious, only because he was giving her just enough too. He had given her
was nothing. Yeah, I didn't think there was anything. I didn't think there was anything malicious about Josie, right? Yeah, I think Josie was just trying to. I think
she was trying to figure out what it was.
She was trying to figure, but she was also determined to come out on top. And I'm not mad about that, because she's thinking to herself, "This is a good man, right? This is a good man. We met in church. Hell, the first lady introduced us, right? And Lex should have minded her daggone business." I was like, why
are you in these people's business?
So yeah, it wasn't that I disliked Josie. I just hated that whole situation.
Yeah, I felt for her.
I hated the situation, because it really bothered me that he, and the flip side of that is it bothered me that I wish that Ashira had a viable candidate. As well.
When a man told her she could never have sex with nobody else, that's why he was still digging it down twice a year. So
well that was the other thing, right? That I couldn't get past that, and I didn't understand how people gave him a pass for that, because I was like, it's one thing for a brother who is as soft as toast to try and tell you that, right? You're like, you ain't got the balls. it's very, very, very different.
Yes.
When a murderer.
Yes.
And this was not a heat of the moment. He was like, baby, let's be clear on one thing. You will never, ever, ever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like we heard him say that, but maybe you say, well, okay, well, she was pregnant when he said that, and now it's 3 years later, and even Love, and I'm gonna get at her when the time comes, because when in her pre-publication thoughts, Love was like, it's 3 years later, and Jazz is not thinking about being with a Sharon. I was like, lies and
Lies you tell.
fabrications, right? Because he clearly still was. He just wasn't actively pursuing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I liked that he was miserable. I mean, you were like, they're both pretty miserable right now. And I was like, yes, I like that he's miserable. I hated that she was so miserable because, she was dealing with that many working mothers deal with, right?
Yep.
That whole dynamic, that
Yep.
whole, how society continues to guilt women for going after their dreams, for
Yep.
trying to quote unquote have it all. And when it seems as if the mother is not as as present for the child, it's okay for that to be the case for dad, but when mom is the one who is not as quote unquote present, all kinds of names and accusations and recriminations are thrown out at women
Mm-hmm.
by men and women, right? And again, I thought that Jazz was a great co-parent. I did not think that Jazz participated in any of that necessarily, right? But that goes back to that like emotional immaturity where he just allowed things and allowed certain situations to transpire, where I was like, brother, let's pay coastal attention. Yes, I appreciate that you and your daughter are flying out regularly so she can see her mother and so on and so forth. And look, she as a kid doesn't know she's hurting feelings when she's saying things like, I want to go
Right.
back to my house, not
Right.
mommy's house. And it's like, well, wait, they're both your houses, right? But that was
Mm-hmm.
her reality. And so I felt bad for Ashira, and that was not a Jazz thing, right? Like that was independent of Jazz.
Yeah.
That was not something that Jazz had inflicted on her or enacted on her, but that was part and parcel of trying to pursue her dreams while also having this little human being,
Right.
that calls her mommy.
Yep.
And somebody's got to be there, right? And if you're going to give her stability, she can't necessarily be globetrotting all over the place, right? Particularly once was starting preschool or whatever. So, well, she's got to be back by then. She's got to be back in New Jersey so that she can start, and all of that, right? And where does that leave Ashira, who as a dancer, she's got a short window to really squeeze the juice out of that opportunity anyway, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
not something that she can do all around the world for the next 40 years, right? It's not
Right.
like practicing law where she'd be in her 80s and still doing
Yep.
it. So having to strike while the iron is hot, but feeling more and more this absence and
Mm-hmm.
the guilt on top of that, even with an incredibly well cared for and well loved and resources and all of that, right? Again, money doesn't fix everything.
Mm-mm. No.
And it was that was another permutation of that money doesn't fix everything.
Yeah, no. I'm reminded of Asmir beating up Raina's boyfriend or whatever, the love interest, the creepy guy.
Yes.
And the same way that Jazz beats up the guy, whatever,
Austin. Austin or
Austin.
yes. That I had, I was very upset about that. And it had nothing to do with Austin is a piece of shit.
For
Full
sure.
stop. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Full stop. But I did not believe Jazz's explanation for why he did what he did. Like that was, to me, that was not the full story for the full on ass whooping, right? Because if it's just you upset with her because you told her you upset with him because you told him to stay away from her, and he also was talking a little slick, when y'all are in Costa Rica or whatever, and you were mad, you never got over how broken his betrayal left Ashira. That's put his lights out and be done with it, right? That was literally 2 knockout punches, which Jazz could deliver, and but like he whipped him.
He did.
And that to me
Hands.
was definitely more about ego. And I'm going to admittedly project now additional reading into that, because I felt like Austin represented Jazz's insecurity about the type of man that Ashira should be with.
Yeah.
And that also bled into that vicious beating. Right. That beating was always, I felt like that beating was always going to be vicious. Because he was tracking her phone and knew when they were going to meet up. So if that's the case, like if you were reading the messages, then you always knew from the messages.
Right.
It's not like she was giving him a legitimate chance. She wasn't checking for him.
She wasn't sending him pictures of her vagina.
Right. So all of that was just and it was just such a vicious, it was so vicious that I was like, okay, brother, you done laid out, reasoning that I think other readers latched onto to be like, that's right, Austin had that coming. I was like, Austin didn't have like cosmetic surgery required.
No.
Coming. Right. No, not 4 years later.
Right.
Not 4 years later, where she ended things with him, moved on, fell in love with you. Y'all had a child together. Right. Austin had nothing to do with why y'all weren't together.
No.
He didn't have that coming. And that's, again,
because he was trying to get put on. He was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, right. He was putting in effort where, basically, I know this ain't gonna go nowhere, but I'ma still show up.
And it just, and the fact that was done while on a date with Josie, and I was just like, nigga, if you don't, so because like separate out like the super dramaticness of it all, right? We can, I think most of us agree that is not far-fetched, right? This notion of I want to continue to control, again, the toxicity, right? We are not together, and I want to be able to do what I'm doing while also controlling what you do. And if that means interrupting my date with another woman,
right,
to come and disrupt what you got going on,
that's why I say he's not a safe person.
I'm going to do that. And I'm going to justify doing that. And I hated that it was Austin, because I felt like that gave one too many readers. They were like, yeah, well, he deserved it. And I was like, but let's back up and like focus on the toxicity of how this man is moving right now. Like, that's not okay. You're literally on a date with another woman. And he does it again when now, they're post vacation and he fucks her behind her studio, and people are like, well, she shouldn't have allowed him to do that. And I'm like, but y'all are like, but where's the accountability for him? That he's literally on a date with another woman and then stopping in to screw his baby mama. And
because he the one screaming Christ and Christ crucified, not her.
Exactly. Exactly. He's surprised. He's surprised she know how to pray.
Right. He's telling her she need to get up on her Bible. He's the one supposed to be deep in the book. So why y'all not mad at him? That's why I'm gonna knock these people drink over. I don't mind. I'm gonna run after I do it though, but I am gonna do it.
It was very, and the second beat down with Tyreek, it was like, of course none of us are gonna defend that, right? Because I mean, nobody's gonna defend Tyreek, because it was like, nigga, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
But it was also like, but Jazz, why do you keep allowing this cousin, who clearly don't have the sense God gave a beetle, because he's provoking you in this way, why do you keep allowing him around you? It's not like he lived around the corner from Jazz.
Right.
Like, he would have to come with someone to Jazz's home to be around Ashira. Right. And I was just kind of like, if he put out the word to say Tyreek is no longer allowed around me, the family would have honored that. And that would have been the end of it. Because Tyreek didn't know how to fucking act.
You're absolutely right.
So I was just like, so you're continuing to allow him to come around you, even though, as you've told us, he has been disrespectful over and over and over again. And then you just finally snapped.
Right.
And sent him to the hospital. And I was just like, there has to be some middle ground between you say nothing and then you are hospitalizing people. Like there's an ocean of reactions between those two things.
I would agree.
We have to be able to explore those things, because, like, brother, like,
what we doing?
How about leave Tyreek at home from now on? It'd be as simple as that.
Well, and I think it was like an escalation of what happened with the little boy in the apartment building, and the older guy ends up bringing him to the unit, and he has to apologize, which is just another form of bullying. That little boy don't know, but I understand. You got to do according to the streets and the code and blah blah blah. It's fine,
right?
But his hot-headedness, which I can't remember if he gets a formal diagnosis or diagnosis in the book, but it to me, I didn't get it's for me. He just seemed like, yeah, the PTSD and the nightmares and the like, all of that. I grant you that. I don't take it away. You that's real. But at the same time, I felt like, just like with her, where her stuff just presented differently. um but it really just kind of made me constantly question, like, when you go to bed at night, like, where are you putting all of this in your mind? Like, how are
Yeah.
you justifying it? Where does all of this stuff sit for you?
Yeah.
Because you can't think that this is how it's supposed to go. Which is why, when we first started, and you were like, he was calling some audibles. Like, because a
Yeah.
lot of this stuff couldn't have been on the list.
Right.
But he
Right.
never stopped to think. And there were times when he was like, I got to get back on track, and blah blah blah. But it never was to the point of him, like you said earlier, where he really understood the damage that he had done. It
Yeah.
was just like, I ended up getting what I wanted, and we're here now.
Yeah.
And that is not the same as, I understand the impact of my behavior. And needless to say, obviously goes without saying, I'll never do it again. But, like, I really get how I was able to contort my faith and my actions, and how my reasoning was warped and prevented me from understanding, like, what I was really doing. He does not get there.
No.
And I'm not sure that even now that they married and in love, although, as I said before, and I'll continue to say, they shouldn't be. uh, I'm not convinced that he wouldn't beat somebody ass. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that that's out of his system,
Oh, I don't think it's out of his system
like,
either.
as a way of coping with the world, or coping
Yeah.
with things that he does not like. And
Yeah.
so his character arc was very shallow. He doesn't really grow at all. And I'm trying to think, does she grow, or does she just end up with him and just tolerate him? I don't know. But they were neat. I mean, they were definitely an interesting pair. Like, they were they were an interesting pair. He, to me, is Nadira. Like,
See, I thought Nidera was worse. And I
did you
think,
really?
well, because my biggest beef with Nidera was and maybe the difference is because Siobhan, I thought that as Jazz, my biggest beef with Nidera was as a parent, right?
I get that. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
what I felt her failure to do then forced Zoe to do, the son. Whereas in this instance, right, Siobhan is still, young and innocent and unaware. And also I felt like Jazz did legitimately put, at least to his understanding, what was best for Siobhan as the priority at
Mm,
all times. And then his relationship with her mother was its own animal as they were trying to figure that out. But he was clear, and he did convict himself on. I think, though, this came after Shira saying, like, I'm tired of being made to feel like an outsider. And he's like, oh my God, like, it was never my intention to make you feel like an outsider, and I will do better. And I felt like that was one of the few times where, particularly in book 3, where Jazz was really taking accountability, even for things that he might not have been aware that he was doing,
hmm.
as opposed to kind of being like, oh, interesting. But the ends justify the means, and by any means necessary. I felt
Yeah,
like that was his position on everything else. Whereas with Siobhan, I thought that was one area where he was like, oh, I did not realize that might have been what I was doing. And I'm going to make sure I don't do that going forward. I will not have Siobhan's mother feeling like an outsider.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I agree. The parenting part is significant, and I will tell you this: Ashton look a whole lot better than me now. Because I was ready to bury him alive, but not anymore.
that is so funny.
Not anymore. He has gone up in my estimation, because this one here, mm-mm,
That is so funny.
mm-mm.
It is
What's the
so
pull the lever? What did my girl say in the Emperor's New Groove?
it was a very it was a very let me just go through, because I want to make sure, there were a couple of things that, in people's uh commenting, that I wanted to make sure you and I talked about, and I think we actually covered it, covered most of it. One of the things, so two things that people were, there was a lot of, but she did this, right? So when someone would say it was team Jazz versus team Shishi, right? And so if team Shishi was like, you know, he's manipulative, right? He withheld things, and team Jazz would be like, but she did this and she did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things, there's a couple of things where that came up in particular. The abortion situation. And to be clear, people were not it wasn't so much that people were taking issue with her right to choose. People absolutely took issue with the manner in which she handled it. And I agreed with that. But I think also with some retrospect, and just to refresh the memory, right? She waits until after Jazz, Ashira, and Siobhan have been together for an entire week in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
She waits until he's literally getting in the car to go to the airport to tell him she's pregnant. She's already made the appointment. And he's like, baby, please no. And she's like, there's nothing to discuss, right? I agree that was not the way to handle it, because while his opinion was ultimately not going to dictate her decision, where they were was as a result of actions of both of them.
Yeah.
And so handling it in that way where it's like, I'm just, this is just FYI. That's not one of those FYI things.
No,
And I
that's why I think she should have
understood.
kept her mouth shut. Just don't tell her.
Agreed. And I also understood why that for him made him step all the way back. And from that point, they were no longer sleeping together.
Yeah,
And
he
to
was done
his
with her at that
credit,
point.
right? And to his credit, he was, he understood in retrospect why she could not at that point in time have another baby. And I agree with some who were like, I think she might have been suffering from postpartum depression. Even if she wasn't, at that point, Siobhan was 9 months old. God bless people that do the back to back to back to back, like two babies in 2 years. Like, God bless them. Because I don't know how the way my sanity is set up, that would not have been a good idea. So on the one hand, I agreed with people that took her to task for handling it that way, but I gave her grace on that, and I understood him stepping away, and I thought he did what he needed, just as she did what she needed to do. He did what he needed to do in stepping away. I gave grace though, because I was like, it was clear that she was struggling, and she was struggling even more than he realized she was struggling, right? That's another one of those light bulbs that doesn't go off for him until well after the fact.
Yeah.
The equivocating him having Ava in the mix to her having Sergio in the mix. And they're like, we're equal. They cancel each other out. And they used those two people similarly, but in my mind, they didn't cancel each other out, because Jazz tells us he had no contact with Sergio because he chose to never go to her club. Right. And that was the only aspect of Ashira's life that Sergio was present, her club. And Jazz was able to completely avoid him by simply not going to the club, right? Yeah. So I thought to myself, that's different from a personal assistant where Ava was all up and through the business. Right. Ava was at Noelle's mother's funeral, right? Like, get your mind around that, right? Yeah. Like, it was like, why is the personal assistant in the church at and helping Noelle with dances? And that was a whole other dynamic where, it's like I gave Noelle grace because Noelle was a grieving teenager, but like Noelle was like piling on, right? It was like one more person, that felt that she had disappointed and let her down and wasn't giving her what she needed anymore. And it was like she's just one person, right? She was just one person, what she's supposed to do. Right. So the last thing that people seemed to have very strong feelings about and use this as like a criminal omission on Ashira's part was when she stopped taking birth control. And I love Alicia Briston, right, who always gives the real time, because Alicia was Team Jazz book 1, right? I remember her posting, and she was like, y'all, Ashira can take a long walk off a short pier. Like, I am Team Jazz after book 1. After book 2, and definitely after 3, she was like, I hate Jazz. Yeah. I hate him, And I remember telling her, I said, you typically call it balls and strikes. You normally, like, when you're excited, and when you're not, but you usually, right? And I was like, so the fact that you move from one side to the complete other end of the spectrum was very telling for me, just because of how she normally conducts herself when she's reading. But she made an excellent point in going back for the receipts, right? Because she's like, wait a minute, she went off the birth control. By that point, they had not been intimate in a year. They weren't even sleeping together, right? Because she goes off the birth control early in book 3 when she's in Costa Rica. That's when she stops taking the birth control. Yeah. By this point, they have not slept together in a year, right? It's like, well, when they started sleeping together, it was like, well, yes. But the one who proclaimed he didn't want to be nobody's baby daddy, he wanted to be somebody's husband, why was he running up in her raw?
Right. In the first place.
Why didn't he ask? Are you still on BC?
Mm-hmm.
So people are like, well, but she was the one talking about having another child. Okay, fine. That might have been a little reckless, right? When she was like, well, I wouldn't be averse to having another child. Maybe.
Yeah, she told her she need a sibling or something, she said.
Yeah, it was like, oh, I'd be fine with having another one. And he's looking at her like, what? Excuse me? So it's just interesting, some of the things that people were like, well, but these are equal. These cancel each other out.
I didn't see them as the same.
Which I didn't agree with that either. And again, like I said, I don't hate Jazz, but there were things that he did where I was just like, brother, you making it real hard for me to want you to get happily ever after. I'm not sure how I feel about this.
I'm sure, but
we know you sure, Pastor.
But I do. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Do you have other?
No. Those are some of the things that were very heated sub arguments.
But what do you think? What do you think that's like? So if I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of someone that is Team Jazz, and because it's not that I'm Team Ashira, I'm just anti him. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying, because she did, I mean, she had some stuff with her, but to me, his overshadows it because he exacerbated. She was already going to come to the table immature. She was already coming to the table without some things, but he just made it worse, which is why I fought him more, because all of this could have been very easily remedied by him coming clean. Then it's over. But again, also the book will be over, so obviously we can't do that. But I'm trying to figure out, like, how can what would make him redeemable? Like, what is it that he had done other than have money and have sex with her? That, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, he was an excellent co-parent. Like, that's a great point. I don't take that away from him. He was focused on, laundering the money that he got before he was out and the money that accumulated while he was out to make a legitimate business. He, loved his family and supported them and kind of went along with the party, even though she pushed it. He wasn't a stick in the mud about it. I even don't fault him for being honest with women about, like, I date 2 women at a time. Like, he was very upfront about a lot of that. Yeah. I think, like, what keeps him from being a book bae, or I'm looking at her face right now, Ayana, or a brother-in-law, because she only got one bae, but she got a lot of people in her family. Yes. So what keeps him from being a book bae or a brother-in-law for me is just how poorly he treated her, and because of his baggage. And I don't think that can be excused. And it's not to say that he doesn't have any redeeming qualities, because most of us are our best selves at work. It is our families and our friends that get 13-year-old us and 10-year-old us and been through the fire and the flood us. But we compartmentalize very well. Yeah. That to me is just human. Yeah. That is not anything that makes him special or better than anyone else, which is why I couldn't figure out why Ezra kept calling him and trying to prophesy something over him. And I want to be like, Ezra, have you been asleep? You've not had enough rest, because if you was on your game, this is a Raji situation. You should have been giving him Logos. Read the book, not Rhema. I don't have no prophecy for you until you adhere to the book. Yeah. So
I think one of the things that people pointed to, and I don't disagree with this, he prayed for her.
Okay, so
and in terms of pushing her to pursue her dream, he was very much an advocate of that and spoke words of life to her. and was like, go do it. Right. And
Mhm.
in fairness to her friend circle, they might have been doing that, but it clearly didn't resonate the same way as when he said it. And then of course setting things in motion for her to go do it, right?
Yeah.
To open the dance studio and things of that nature. I also think that it was, I keep coming back to grace, right? Pun intended, since that's
Mhm.
the title of book 2. People just had a lot more grace for him because ironically, I think he was more damaged. So
But I
people
think
great, I think
yeah.
on balance
Yeah.
between the two,
Yeah, oh, he
people
definitely had,
viewed
yeah.
him, right, as far more damaged, had been through far more than her. And as a result, they gave him a lot more grace than they gave her. And that made his missteps less earth shattering
Mhm.
and made her what we might consider molehills mountains. Her missteps were horrendous in comparison to him. And I think it really just boiled down to folks gave him a lot more grace. The third thing I would say is they also focused on his intentions,
Which don't mean
right?
nothing to me.
And I don't disagree with you. Um, but I think people focused a lot on the fact that his intentions were first and foremost, right? It was in pursuit of God, and it's like, okay, fine. And it was like to find a wife, right? So he wasn't out looking to be a hoe and run through as many as he could, and whatever the case may be. He wasn't trying to use her. And then once he realized he had these feelings for her, his intention was, well, I want this forever. I want permanency, right? I
Mhm.
want this woman to be my wife, and I want to care for her and take care of her and our family, as I want to be responsible for her.
Mhm.
And so again, it was almost like folks agreed with him that the ends justify the means, right? It was like, if this is going to get us to the point of him being, her husband, and being able to take care of her and be there for her in every way possible as her husband, then sometimes you got to crack some eggs, right?
And I think
That's what I
what
think.
it amounts to is how good it feels to have a person desire you and to have a person want to be better for you. Except and like you're saying, we do give men a whole lot more leeway than we give women, for a lot of reasons and in a lot of ways. But for me, that's how they end up underdeveloped, and that's how
Mm,
we end up, you know, with a lot of things. There's no reason for me to go into this on this podcast because we already long, but to me that is not sufficient to not hold him accountable. And I don't he had been through more than her, in the sense that, like, he had been in danger because his custodial parent had an addiction problem. He had ended up in the street and kind of trying to make the best out of that scenario, ended up going to jail. um which is a part of his family's, allegiance to him, because he took one for the team. It was supposed to be,
mm-hmm,
and it was because Juggy messed up and blah blah blah.
mm-hmm.
But that does not negate the fact that her primary caregiver, the woman for whom inside her body she did live,
Yeah.
rejected her so significantly. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even when they're 16, her mom is like inappropriate with her and it's like, you're aroused, I can see your nipples. Like, her mama was crazy. And so, even before her mother turned her back on her because of Noel, she still didn't sound to me like the best mama. And so, I think people sometimes don't have as much sympathy or empathy for children who go through things when they have money, kind of like the, oh, poor little rich girl. I'm
Yeah.
sure your life is horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No. That I think that hits the nail on the
she
head.
had some shit going on.
Yeah.
Like her mom really read to me like whoever the woman is in the Muted series that turns Ashton out and is then
Oh,
a terrible person.
Norma Jean. Yes,
Yeah, she
there are a
read to
number of
me.
people who definitely made that
Yeah,
parallel.
she had
Yeah.
strong Norma Jean vibes, and I was like, "Girl, you need to go to the doctor too." So, so it's not, I get it, but I also think he was not treating her well.
Yeah.
Regardless of what problems she had, she did not do to him what he did to her. Okay, did anything surprise you? Or did you have a favorite character or a character that you most identified with?
Not so much a favorite character, but I did like the side, whatever was going on between Juggy and Joss, not just because we got to tease Joss Renee mercilessly in the Indie Love group about this starring role in this series. And I would have loved to have seen even more of it because, of course, now Joss is married, and but Juggy's holding on, and he starts having these medical issues, and the push and pull of that. Like, that was its own very interesting side soap opera that was going on. Surprised me. I think that it was less surprising, but the what I keep coming back to is the moment where he is, again, we're in his head because he doesn't fully admit this to Ashira, but when he's like, and if bringing other women into the picture was what would needed to happen to get her to grow the fuck up and get on board with this plan, then so be it. And I was just like, to the very end, motherfucker. Because I felt like anyone after that point that was still on the Josie situation and the Ava situation, it was like, no. He done told you very clearly both of those were means to an end.
Yeah.
That he knew exactly what he was doing, and it was never about moving on when he messed with Josie. It was never about moving on. Right. He fed us that lie in real time, but then he really reveals his heart. And so I guess what was not surprising, but it was a nice little moment, and I don't know what is the right way to describe it, right, where it was like, because when we were riding along with him, that's not what he was giving us necessarily. So it was like that was like a deep thought, right? So the reader wasn't privy to that. The reader wasn't privy to that until his plan was successful.
Yeah.
And now we get the true, like, that was a means to an end. Right? Always was. I didn't agree with people, though, because there were some people who felt like, he had already decided Josie was never going to be, once he knew that Josie was an escort, Josie was never going to be wife material. And I thought that was less of an issue for him because Josie was never going to be his wife no matter what. Josie could have been a virgin.
Yeah, it didn't matter what she
did.
Yeah.
It didn't matter, right? She never had a chance. No matter what he told her, no matter what he told himself, she never had a chance. So I mean, other than that, I wouldn't say that anything was surprising. Maybe that, it wasn't a surprise because in book one, you're wondering what is the deal with Celestine because we haven't met her yet, and we don't. On the one hand, I was like, is she dead? Is she? Where is the mama? And it wasn't a surprise, but it was like, aha, now we know where the mama is. And it almost would have been better, right, if she had not been, alive, because that dynamic was so bad and so toxic and poisonous. She was vicious. Like, she was vicious.
She was.
To her daughter, which was just sad to see unfold.
What surprised me? I don't know that anything surprised me, but I can say so my favorite character, or the character I most identified with, was Mel the flight attendant. I said, poor Mel, child. Every time somebody get on a private plane, Mel got to stay here and watch this foolishness carry on. And all she wants to do is give the sleepy time tea and go on with her life. And it's always some bullshit. So I appreciate Mel. and I hope she's doing okay.
Hilarious.
Do you have a favorite character or favorite moment?
One of my favorite moments was when Juggy cursed him out. It was definitely one of my favorite moments because I don't know who else was going to be in a position that had the credibility with him, that knew enough about what was going on, because Juggy was disgusted.
Yeah, he was hot.
Right? Like, Juggy was like, motherfucker. Like, you are out of order. Okay. Ezra was a little too diplomatic with it, right? Because even Ezra was like,
he got too many kids.
Brother, I don't know if you should be going down this road because, Ezra got too many kids to really chastise him the way he needed to be chastised. So I loved that moment. And even Jazz, thinking to himself, because Juggy done caught him, he's like scrambling to pull his boxes up, and he done fell on the couch, and dropped the bowl of milk or whatever he did. I don't know. The man was discombobulated, right? And Juggy comes in and is just like, nigga, get your shit together. Like, you a mess. Okay?
I hope you're embarrassed because you should be.
Yes, you should be embarrassed. And Jazz is saying and thinking to himself, niggas has been killed in jail for less than this. And it's like, well, who cares?
Go sit down.
Because at this point, right, you need to know you ain't shit. Okay. So I just thought like the whole way that was handled, but also because the message needed to be delivered.
Yeah.
And it needed to come from somebody with credibility, because Jazz was still convincing himself, I think. Like, I wonder if, but for Juggy calling him on it, would he have? Because he breaks things off with Josie the next day.
Yeah.
The next day, he breaks things off with her, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they get back from Italy, and it's clearly, even though the timeline wasn't entirely clear in my mind, it's clear that he continues to juggle the two of them for weeks at least, in my opinion, right? Because there's dates that are still happening, and he's showing up and, getting in the tub with Ashira. And it reminded me of something that I remember picking up from watching my brothers and their friends when I was younger. And, several of my brothers have children with more than one woman, out of wedlock, all of that. And so I felt like I got a front row seat to baby mama, baby daddy drama that just really colored my whole. I was just like, I guess, oh God, I can't be with a man that got children. And lo and behold, I married a man that has a child. But I remember thinking, okay, so basically from ages 0 to 5, you should not that always, but you should not be surprised if they're still dipping back, because it just seemed like
what a baby mother,
right? Yeah. From up until age 5, like age 5, they can hold an entire conversation with you on the phone. They can say, I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to get picked up. But so it requires less mom or dad being on the phone to communicate all the needs, right? The child is able to start communicate more and more. But prior to that point, right, the child is still forming their language skills and all of that. And so you're still having a lot of direct contact between the parents, unless you have an intermediary. And so it didn't surprise me that they were still sleeping together. It didn't surprise me that she continued sleeping with him while she was pregnant, even though people were like, how you get that upset at him? But meanwhile, you were sleeping with him the whole time. All of that made perfect sense to me, right? Because I was just like, number one, she's pregnant. Who else not that women don't do it, but it made sense that if she was looking for sexual release, she would keep going back to right, to her baby daddy, even though the substantive part of the relationship is just a hot ass mess. There is no relationship, but she'll keep going back to him for sex. And oh, by the way, let's not forget that he had threatened her, right? And then after Siobhan is born, again, it made sense that they continued sleeping together while the relationship itself was in shambles, because you already have that level of familiarity. You share this little baby and you're spending a lot of time around each other and all that. So it just, it made sense that they were still after the year. Like I said, I understood why he took the step back, but then them slipping right back into each other literally made perfect sense to me, because it was like all they needed was time, space, and opportunity, right? And a little distance from what had happened in Paris, right? For it to happen all over again.
I agree with that. I don't begrudge either one of them that, honestly. I think it's very easy, like you're saying, to slip back into old, very safe, familiar habits and territory, for sure.
It just, so it just, but I love that moment where Jug kind of coming back, Juggy, cussed him out. Like, I loved Della. I loved everything about Della, Aunt Rose and Aunt Rose having the premonition, and those were all really nice touches. And I loved adding the African ancestral practices, right? That was sitting very harmoniously with, also Christian spirituality, if that was, what you wanted as well, and making the point that they're not mutually exclusive.
Right.
And, his vulnerability that we were able to see also as it pertained to Juggy, right? That what's going on with Juggy, we don't know what's wrong with Juggy, trying to figure out what's going on with Juggy.
And was bothered.
And for all, it's like the reminder of, again, of money not fixing everything, because Juggy had resources by now, but Juggy was still moving as it pertained to his health, like he was still back in the hood relying on the ER, you know, instead of that he could access a private physician to be like, what is wrong? What is happening here?
Right.
You know, so is the reminder that if you don't change, if there's no evolution that happens on the inside, then even when things are changing around you on the outside, right? That's one of the reasons why Suge Knight went from being a multi-millionaire, you know, record exec that got out of the hood, and is now going to spend the rest of his life in jail.
Yep, very unfortunately. Yeah,
right?
Some things, right. And some, like he needed to change, and he just could not, did not.
Yeah. And I loved, I did love getting a glimpse that Lisa Mary, right, has Ezra's gift. I liked learning the names of the other two babies, because we knew that there were more, but we didn't necessarily know their names. And you know, and I'm chuckling to myself because of all the speculating that we're doing about what life must be like, that, you know, Ezra and Lex got 3 little girls back to back to back, right? Including one that's got the gift, right? That's like 4 or 5 years old and out here giving prophecies, and, you know, and all that comes with that. And Lex having to humble herself again. Not that Lex is arrogant, because she's not, but like that whole, number one, it felt out of character for her, but then I enjoyed her, like, the mea culpa, and just being like, I just, you know, I shouldn't have gone in. Ezra being like, I told her she shouldn't have. Had I known, she wouldn't have gone there.
Right, she wouldn't have been doing it.
It would not have happened.
Stop talking to her, first of all.
Right.
Second of all.
when he's like, what did he say when Jazz texts Ezra, and he's like, hey, so what about this? It's something like, what about this woman you want to introduce me to? And he was like, wrong Carmichael. I have said nothing to you about hooking up or nothing with nothing. Like, who? What?
I wouldn't have told you to be with neither one of them. So
yes. Go quickly, because you mentioned her at the very beginning, the Cynthia situation, which was a funny situation, right? It was a very funny situation, and of course the way it happened, and, you know, the way she finds out that he had been to see Cynthia. You see this man, and he's just like, bless your stupid little heart, right? That it never even occurred to him. He's just like, what? I just wanted to stop by and send my condolences. And what did I do? She's like, nigga, you almost about to kill me.
You have to stop.
You done brought cat hair. You know, like,
you have to stop.
You know, it just
you have to stop.
it was a comical moment, right, of that whole Cynthia situation, and her being so very bothered, right, by Cynthia, and assuming, you know, that the Cynthia type is what he wants, and I'm not good enough.
And she couldn't have been more wrong. She just had no idea.
She had no idea that she was the prototype.
Right. She going back to, and she was the prototype before he met her. And that's what I mean by, like, her being an object before she becomes human. He literally wanted the image.
Yeah.
He looked at that family and he said, I'm going to have that. He just didn't know what was underneath it, over it, behind it, and through it, and what it took to actually get that. So she was the prototype when she was sitting there at 16 and he didn't know what her name was. She was the prototype all the years that they were apart. She was the prototype when they did get together, because he wanted that lifestyle, and he wanted a person potentially familiar with that lifestyle to help bring him into it. Even though he knew money, because he had been around it, he had been around Asmi, he had been around the Ellises, so he understood what it was to have money. And it's interesting to me that he didn't, you know, and I don't know how, because if he was 16 at the time, I don't know where the Ellises are versus where, I mean, Iban was a hothead, and I think we see that Sadiq is normal, but I don't remember, I don't know how much younger, like if they're the same, like obviously Asmi is older than everybody, but I don't know if Sadiq and Jazz are the same age, or if there's several years between them. I don't remember. But he would have seen money, he would have seen Earl Ellis and his wife, he might not have seen Asmi and Raina, but to me, like, he would have had some idea of it, but maybe he hadn't seen it outside of the criminal element, and showing up and look and seeing that family and seeing, you know, what this Black guy was able to do and kind of wanting that for himself. But she did not become the human object of his affection until the last 5 minutes of the book, probably 55%. Who do you want to get their own book, and how did you feel about the updates?
Oh, I want Juggy and Joss Renee to get their own. Like I want, because I do want Joss to divorce Rakim, because I want her and Juggy together. I know that Juggy is boning Ashira's cousin Diana down in Della, but I don't want that. I want him with Joss Renee. So I put in my request. It's not going to happen, and I'm just going to have to make peace with that.
I want Tanisha to get her own book.
I love taking tips.
I love the reference to Tanisha's show, and I want Tanisha to get her own book. I want her to run away from her children.
I was about to say, because that's not going to happen, because she's going to Alton with his foolishness is her man, and she's going to stick beside him.
She ain't going to leave him.
That we're not getting that, and the world is better for it. The world
I want her to leave all of them and start over again in another country. Yeah. What questions do you still have?
I do hope that Nicholas continues to find his way to being okay.
Yeah.
I like that Jazz did not he couldn't bring himself to just have nothing to do with Nicholas, right? Yeah. Like Nicholas tugged at him, and that was good, because Nicholas tugged at him even when he was living with his father, right? Yeah. And he just couldn't bring himself to have nothing to do with Nicholas, because at that point in time it necessarily meant going through his dad. And then of course, you know, once Nicholas is old enough to move out and moves in with Jazz, was living on his own, right, till he completely starts just messing up his life. So I liked that we were at least being told that Nicholas now had support, and he, you know, was with Jazz and was hopefully finding his way to being okay. I hope the same for Noelle, and hoped that this family that Jazz and Ashira have built for themselves, not just for Siobhan and the baby that's coming, but also for Nicholas and for Noelle, you know, that the two young people would hopefully heal and be better than their brother and sister, right? That hopefully Nicholas and Noelle end up having healthier relationships, because they both, right, also now had parent, you know, similarly had parent situations to their older siblings, and had to navigate that. Particularly since it was clear that Noelle was not, things were only going to go even further downhill for, you know, Noelle and Noel and Noelle's relationship, because now Celestine was permanently back in the picture. And then I loved Ashira being like, well, guess what? I choose family, right? And I'm going to protect family. And that's just going to be that. And I'm not going to give in to Celestine's tantrums, especially not when she done forgiven the villain of that story, which was just bizarre, but also real, right? Because people do that all the time. Forgive the actual villain and hold the grudge against everybody else that is somehow involved.
Yeah, I would agree with that. My question is, how do I get them apart? That's my question. How can I make sure that in future stories they are not together? Should it be an asteroid? Because, you know, the physicists, they just figured out fusion. You see, did you hear about that?
I can't.
So if they're going to do that, surely they can separate these two. So that's what I want to get to the bottom of. No, you disagree?
I can't. I cannot.
I'm just telling you what I know. Surely we can figure out how to separate these two. Surely we can. I forgot to talk about this, then we can wrap up.
By the way, therapist. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I would love to know your thoughts on the fact that she has figured out that giving him a blowjob while he sleeps brings him out of the nightmares in jail. And I was like, wow, well, that's an innovative, creative way of, it appears that he has not yet accidentally knocked her head off.
That's what I was gonna say.
Thankfully, because I
Yeah.
was like, that's a very dangerous strategy to employ. Since we're in his head when he's
Exactly.
having the dream, and we know
where he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. To me, that was just more of her seeking. Like, she did not even seek her own safety. Now, you know that this boy been through what he been through, and he's sitting on the edge of the bed and sleepwalking and sleep dreaming and sleep PTSD, whatever. You won't even leave the room. Like, she really was seeking. Like, anything that he could give her, any morsel of time, space, touch, affection, she wanted it all. But whatever works. But to me, because I don't have that kind of like seeking impulse, because my mother was not a terrible person, I wouldn't get that close to nobody that didn't know where they were. I would not be putting my hands on one and saying, "No, buddy, But I mean, it's fine. I mean, I will say that the therapist, to me, did not. For them to have been in therapy, and they commented more than once on how much the therapist costs. Y'all paying a whole lot of money not to listen. And even when they were listening, there was one session where the therapist tells her that he's not completely wrong, or he's not completely at fault. So now I want to call the board on her. But it irked me no end. It irked me no end that he didn't say, "I'm holding this big secret. I got to figure out how to tell her. Can I bring her to my next session?" Like, this is what I mean by, like, they were really the perfect storm of brokenness.
Yeah.
And it's only a few people that we have seen like this, where it was more broken than romance, or more brokenness than healing, because a lot of, like, some of her other characters, you really do get to see them heal, and which is why at the end they can be the book bae or the book brother-in-law. But like these two, they were not any further along than when they started. And to me, to go to therapy and be paying all that money and still be looking dumb, I'm calling the board. I want your license. You ain't gonna keep fleecing me. This is a scam. Like the low vibration lady, you heard about that? You ain't gonna take my money. I'm not gonna cash app you nothing. You better have a plan and a system. I want a workbook. I want some steps. I want a plan.
You want a workbook?
I want something. You ain't finna sit across from me and just be saying anything, and I'm out here still being reckless, and you see me being reckless, and the person I'm being reckless toward is also your client.
Ooh,
I would have put a fire alarm. I'm setting something off in here, and I'm gonna tell you that.
With the fire alarm,
somebody gonna hear about this. Now, I don't know who, but they gonna hear it.
Oh, God.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. So in Nadira and Lons, we got the boogers. But here we got the semen on the shirt and her breathing it in. Where did you put that? While you was reading.
Like, listen, that didn't bother me at all.
It didn't bother me. We've already been inoculated, because the book, after the boogers, I said it's nothing she won't write.
Yeah, it didn't bother me at all. I was kind of like, listen, I mean, you know what? Nasty things done happen, and when you done swallowed all manner of bodily fluids,
talk through it.
Then what is sniffing it?
What is sniffing it
on the shirt? Right. I was just kind of like, I mean, yeah, and her circle of friends. We didn't talk about her circle of friends. Her circle of friends, were supportive. The jury is out for me on how I feel about Peach. I'm sure how I felt about Peach. I'm trying to decide. Yeah, I'm still deciding. I think, and maybe it's going to take another read or two to decide how I felt about Peach, because I didn't dislike her, but I didn't love Peach. I didn't love Peach. Corinne, Shizu, Becky, they were all fine. They were entertaining. And, I liked that she had this, her girl crew, that she had women in her circle where she felt loved and seen and protected and edified. And all of that, because again, going back to, as we talked about, she didn't have that, and Inez also, I thought that was a beautiful relationship.
Yeah.
She had to build, right? She had to build her own family, which
Right.
is a running theme with Love's characters of people,
Yep.
because the folks that are actually related to them by blood be worth not even a quarter of a damn.
Mm-hmm.
And folks having to build family. And
Yeah.
that's real. That's real.
Yeah.
There's lots of folks that do that, particularly as heading into the holidays, and you think about people for whom their families are not a safe space.
Right.
Right. And they have, in instances, cut family off completely, and they will
Mm-hmm.
be spending holidays with the family that they have built. Um, but I'm still deciding. Like, I walked away after 2 reads, still unsure how I feel about Peach.
Yeah. I didn't feel they were not they were there when they needed to be, and when they didn't need to be, they weren't. They didn't, like, let me see. So Jade and her cousin,
Yeah.
like, the cousin brought to me, or oh Lord. Even what's the girl name? Parker and Mandy.
Mm-hmm.
Um Lex and Tashi. Like, there have been other friend groups where the friend just kind of brings more to it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like they were window dressing. They weren't like characters fully to me.
I agree with that. I agree with that, but I felt like, even I don't know that I felt they were. Let me back up. I don't know that I felt that they were window dressing, because I felt like I got enough exposure to the friends to say these are people that she trusts,
Yeah.
where she feels safe, where she feels supported, where she feels completely seen and embraced and loved. That was all I needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Peach was the one that, they had these moments, right? And Peach was seeing things and saying things, and I, I'm it wasn't so. I'm still figuring out how I felt about Peach and what she had to say, because I
Okay.
think, particularly, there's a part of me that felt like Peach was unnecessarily harder on her in book 3, and I didn't
Mm,
love it. I didn't
okay.
love it.
I think for me, I didn't feel like Shizu really loved her. I didn't feel like Becky really loved her. I felt like they were her friends, but I didn't feel like they, Lex and Tashi going in her trunk.
Well, yeah, but that wasn't there.
So that's what I mean. Like, I didn't feel the depth. I didn't feel as deep a connection that I have felt with other friend groups.
Hey,
So to
that's fine.
me, it was just like, these are people that she's known for a long time. That's her circle. But it just kind of read to me as like her traveling friends. Like, I didn't get the sense that, like, Peach was the only one, and Corinne, where it was like deepest, darkest secret time. But I agree with you, though, that in book 3, Peach was sharp. She wasn't. She didn't go easy on her.
Yeah, and I think that I didn't necessarily read it as they were just long time traveling friends, right? Who've known
Okay.
each other for a long time. I felt like and I agree, we didn't, but I also didn't feel like I needed to see her getting deep and dark
Yeah,
with
that's true.
Becky or Shizu to just for it to be implied that
Yeah.
these are the family. This is the family that she has created for herself, because mommy and
Yeah,
daddy ain't
mom and
worth a
daddy ain't
damn.
shit.
She,
Yeah.
Noelle is significantly younger than her.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know,
I also appreciated how much she tried to facilitate Noelle's relationship with her dad.
yeah, that was just it was sad and also just infuriating,
Yeah.
right? It was just very infuriating. And yet that's another one of those things that it's this running theme, right? Of like, love may make it make certain things about it more dramatic, but it's very real, right?
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
men having zero connection to a child that they help create because of the circumstances,
Exactly.
right? There's plenty of men that don't deal with their outside children, plenty of
Yep.
them, right? Like,
Yep.
par for the course.
Exactly.
Sadly, because the child is to blame for the fact that this man could not keep his peen to himself, and
Mm-hmm.
oops,
Mm-hmm.
a baby, and my husband is over here mocking me and power thrusting because you think it's funny. It's not funny. It's not funny.
Hey, T.
Exactly. It's not funny. And just the damage, right? Because you wonder if Ashira had not been so active, and again, giving Noelle grace for how she reacted now when Siobhan was in the picture, and it's like, well, now Shishi's attention is divided because Shishi now has a child, right? Noelle had been the surrogate child, and I just, hoped that, number one, with Noelle moving in with her, and hopefully having the consistent contact with Ashira, with Inez, being part of the family, not just visiting, right, but living there. You hope that heals some of what is broken in Noelle, because it was just infuriating. It was just like, bruh, if you had just kept your dick to yourself,
right.
And what I wish Love had written in to Scare the Bejesus Out of Jazz. I wish Josie had a pregnancy scare. I'm gonna talk to her about that and be like, you should have written that in. I want some deleted scenes, right? Where Josie's like, my period's late. Yeah, nigga. Yeah. Mister, I don't want to be a baby daddy. I never wanted to be a baby daddy, but I'm out here having sex. Well, guess what? Congratulations. Baby number 2 by a completely different woman is now on the way. Bravo. Oh, get on my nerves. I never wanted to be a baby daddy. Well, didn't keep your penis to yourself then.
What were you having sex
She didn't rape you?
No, she didn't. She didn't. Lord have mercy. Okay.
Well, I don't hate him, though. I don't hate him.
You don't hate him? Listen.
I don't hate him. I don't hate him. I just...
listen, I don't have no problem with it. I do, though. I'm comfortable. I feel real good about it. It's making my teeth white. Ain't that what they say?
What?
It's working for me.
God, I don't even know what that means. What?
They be saying that on Twitter, like something, just something crazy to say. Like, I forgot how I first heard it, but I was saying, like, oh, I love cussing people out, keep my teeth white.
Oh my God.
There's a benefit to it. You understand what I'm telling you? It works out for me. I'm not gonna stop because there's a benefit. It works for me. That's what I'm gonna let you know.
But I am glad that you jumped in, you dived in, and I'm glad that this is how we celebrate the holiday season, with your blood pressure through the roof,
right,
as only Love Belvin
and my heart broken that these people won't leave each other alone. Get away from
and they're
other.
Having more children together,
more children over and over again. No one wants to be apart when they should, and that's what I want to get to the bottom of. Anyhow,
Love says Merry Christmas.
She don't care. She's an awful, terrible, evil person. Anyhow, ma'am, you have a good evening.
You too. This has been a blast.
Yes.
We're back.
Bye.
Bye.